welcome to the Candidates Forum / debate by WACA-TV. My name is Yolanda Greaves. I am the host of All Around the Clock. I was going to say your show, John.
Well, thank you for that. Hi, Yolanda. Thanks for doing this with us this year. It's great. My name is John Featherston. I am the host of All Politics is Local. And tonight we are excited to host this year's candidates debate for the contested races in the Maytown election.
We're going to do this evening in 3 separate sections. We are starting with the Board of Health, then we're going to move to the School Committee, and we're going to end the evening speaking with the candidates for the Select Board. So these are the 3 contested races on the May ballot.
And having served on the Board of Health, unfortunately for you guys tonight, I'm going to be asking you the questions for the candidates for the Board of Health.
And then when we switch to School Committee, I'll be asking those questions, as when I first started here in town volunteering, I was a member of the Select Board, of the School Committee. I'm now a member of the Select Board, and we're going to do those questions together.
I think it'll be great if we
Yeah.
do that together.
So before we start with any questions, here are some guidelines for this evening. First of all, welcome to our Board of Health candidates. Each candidate for this section, as well as the other 2 sections, will make a 2-minute opening statement to start. John will then be asking questions that were previously sent in. The candidates being asked the question will have 90 seconds to answer. If an other candidate would like to respond, they will get 60 seconds to respond. And if the original candidate would like to respond to that, they will then have 30 seconds. And once we have gone through all the questions, each candidate will have the opportunity to do a 1-minute closing statement.
All right, so let's get started. Why don't we start with opening statements? If you agree, Dave, ladies go first. Nikki, you want to start with an opening statement? Tell everybody who you are and what your positions are.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, Ashland residents.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Nkiruka Agu, and I am excited to be running for the Board of Health today. As a clinical pharmacist with decades of experience, I do understand the critical role that public health plays in our lives, and I do believe that every resident deserves an opportunity to remain or live in a healthy environment. As members of the Board of Health, I think we're responsible for ensuring that we live in a safe and healthy environment, and I do believe that together we can create a healthier Ashland for us all. The Board of Health is responsible for protecting and promoting a healthy community, and this involves everything from monitoring infections to ensuring a quality supply of food and water, and it also involves promoting a healthy lifestyle, and these are tasks and responsibilities I'm well versed in. Recently, the world was shut down during the COVID-19 pandemic, and I was part of the committee within my own space at work that accessed resources from the DPH, the CDC, and I had to reduce this into understandable policies and procedures to keep employees within my facility safe, the nurses I send out into the field safe, the patients safe as well. I also had to liaise with local healthcare providers to increase testing rates, and I also gave vaccination myself. Not to forget the mental health support that most of these patients also needed. I collaborated with organizations as well to provide this mental health support to my patients as well. So having said this, with the skills and expertise my profession has given me, together in addition with the passion and motivation I have with serving my patients on a broader scale, I do believe and I'm confident that with your support, that we can create a healthier community for all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nikki. Good evening, David. And your opening statement?
Yes, thank you, John and Yolanda, for the opportunity to participate in this forum, and to the organizers as well. My name is David Kinsman. My wife, Brandy, and I have lived in Ashland for 17 years now. Well, we have our son, Nate, who is now a sophomore at the high school. And largely due to him, a good portion of my time over the last 10 years has been spent volunteering in various youth sports leagues, and during that I've had the opportunity to meet several parents around the town. I've actually lived in Massachusetts most of my life. I grew up in Medfield. I remember coming to Ashland for football games and track meets, but while I was growing up, my father was heavily involved in the town government in Medfield. And he served on numerous boards and committees, and he was really sort of the first introduction that I had to the idea of serving your community by volunteering and participating in the local town government. So as for my qualifications, I received a master's degree in organic chemistry from Boston College, quite a long time ago now. And I spent several years following that working on research into advanced materials. For the last 20 years, I've worked with teams of research doing, teams of scientists doing research trying to find cures into a variety of diseases. My wife and I both love that we've made Ashland our home and are particularly fond of the strong sense of community here. This is why I've chosen to run for the Board of Health. I believe that the experience and knowledge I have in the science of materials and medicinal chemistry would be of value in helping the board to fulfill its mission to protect the health and welfare of the citizens. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you, David. And welcome, Barbara. And do you have an opening statement for everybody?
Just make sure you push the button and then make sure it's green. There you go.
Hi, sorry, I was running a little late. So my name is Barbara Sekesogundu-Simon. I'm currently on the Board of Health, and my personal history, I am a mother of 2 boys. My son is graduating from college this year at Framingham State, and my youngest is in middle school, and he's in 8th grade going to high school. So I've been in Ashland coming to 5 years, I would say now. And I feel like there's a lot to do in Ashland, a lot that residents coming together can work together. And that's the reason why I continue asking you guys for a vote to continue in the Board of Health. When I joined the Board of Health, I was thinking, oh, I'm a nurse, so I know health, so it's going to be the same. But with the 20 years experience that I have, I still had a lot more to learn in the Board of Health. And I feel like as a member, I can bring my expertise and be an invaluable asset to the team, because there's a lot. I have a lot that I would like to include, which is continuing building an inclusive culture and improve the engagement that we have with other committees in the town, and how to make the town healthy and safe for all, including making sure that the rules and regulations are maintained and followed. I've seen a lot in the past couple of years, and I feel like as a team, we have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So,
Just before you
Yep,
start, if you all pull your microphones just a little bit closer, if you go like this with your hand, we're going to hang 10, that way you're closer to your, there you go.
so I think Ashland is very, very lucky to have such 3 qualified candidates to be running for the Board of Health. And, you know, a little editorial because it's going to work into kind of my questions. Having first served on the Board of Selectmen before I served on the Board of Health, I often say I was glad that I was served on the Board of Selectmen at first, because the Board of Health is probably the hardest job I've ever done in like public service. It was by far the most rewarding, but also the most challenging, and which would lead me to my first question. And we'll start with you, Barbara. Mm-hmm. As you know, the Ashland Board of Health is a policy-making Board of Health, as you have a full-time health director, and you know you have our inspectors, and we have our part-time health nurse. Mm-hmm. With it being a policy board, what is your take on vaccinations and mandated vaccinations?
Thank you. That's a very good question.
Thank you.
So, being in the health field, so vaccinations are important. And hence, I think in the town of Ashland, that's why they're trying to make sure that they opened a clinic that they can provide vaccination for those that come in before they have like a PCP that's available for them. That way, we're not stopping kids from going to school because they are not vaccinated. But I also feel like it is also a choice for those that cannot have it due to medical reasons. But to prevent a lot of issues and diseases, I think vaccination is an important thing for people to consider. And I would vaccinate my kids with most things, like currently with COVID. A lot of people got vaccinated, and we can see with the results that when people are getting sick, they are mild symptoms that people are seeing. Most of them are asymptomatic. And so I would continue including that to be a part of the Board of Health to continue watching on.
But, so do you support a mandate, or you support?
I will support it. I wouldn't mandate it,
Okay.
but I feel like I'll support it and expect people to think twice before they say no to it.
Okay, thank you. And then, Nikki, your thoughts on vaccinations, and do you support a mandate?
That's a very tough question, especially with COVID that just went by right now. So I'm being a pharmacist. I also really do believe in science, unfortunately, and I do advocate for health policies that are backed by science, that are practical and are also safe and effective as well. Having said that, there are also beliefs that also come into place, and I'm usually very open to listening to my patients, because I have been a community pharmacist where I am in the community literally listening to people. I'm also a clinical pharmacist in the hospital, and then also a male pharmacist on the phone. I will say that because I'm a scientist and I'm also a healthcare professional, I go with what DPH, CDC, and the bodies that have been put in place mandate that we do. Unfortunately, that's my job, so that's what I would do. But when I'm in the field, I will listen to patients, and that's why there are exemptions. Like during COVID, we had employees that didn't want the vaccination. Okay, they had to give their reasons, and then we had to document as needed. So I would follow my buddies, my superior buddies, people that we listen to, and then I'll also document as needed as well for people that do not want to have vaccination done, just so that there are reports and documentation to follow should there be any outbreak of any sort.
Great, thank you. And David?
So, as a scientist, I, as well as Nikki, and I'm sure Barbara as well, believe that any good health policies are rooted in science and scientific study, and have to be, the facts have to drive the policy. That being said, it's tricky because, like so many contentious issues in our society, it pits two things that we value against each other. One is the health of the individual in the community, and the other is the individual's freedom to do the wrong thing or do something that jeopardizes their own health. Where it gets even trickier, obviously, is something with like a communicable disease, which is where vaccines come into play, where if too many people make the wrong decision, then it jeopardizes the safety of the community. So, again, personally, my feeling is that everybody should follow the science and follow the advice of the health professionals and get vaccinated. But I think we go to the point of mandating only after a considerable amount of listening to the community and weighing all the factors. So it sounds a bit wishy-washy, but it's not a simple issue, so I'm not going to give a simple answer.
Well, great, thank you. Once again, deferring to my experience of both as a select board member and on the Board of Health, the N word in Ashland, Nyanza, it comes at you fast, it comes at you furious, and it comes oftentimes it'll come out of nowhere because of the multiple factors of DEP, the EPA, Ashland's responsibility with it. How would you characterize how Ashland has handled Nyanza? And what would you do going forward? And we'll start with you, David.
I think the issue itself, as far as characterizing what Ashland has done, I think Ashland's probably done the best that they can. It's an issue that started back when people are only beginning to realize the environmental impacts of the chemical industry and those sorts of issues. And so, like many other communities that have faced similar issues, you're forced to grapple with the problem as it plays out. I think Ashland is fortunate that we've reached, I think, the last stage now where the EPA is going to help us hopefully do what can be done to mitigate the risk for the entire community. That said, chemical pollution is difficult, and this pollution has been in the environment now for quite some time. Fortunately, what remains doesn't threaten the health of the Ashland citizens too directly, but it's good to know that we've at least got the resources that Ashland needs to deal with the final stage of the problem.
Great, thank you. And then we'll go to you, Barbara. Your thoughts on NYANZA and what the town can do going forward.
I'll agree with David that I think Ashland has done a lot. They did some research on it, and I feel like currently, we kind of briefly have gotten more information on that it's not harmful to humans at this point. But I think it's something that we need to consider trying to keep looking into. It's a tough situation to say we can't really be ahead of it, but you can only deal with the situation once we find out what's really causing it, and then work on it from there. But I feel like as a town, we've worked a lot on it, and it seems like it's really the town has done, I feel like, as much as we could. I don't think we could have done more than what.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Nikki, your thoughts on NYANZA?
So I'm just going to piggyback what my fellow candidates have said, and I don't think there's anything to add other than I've always believed in coordination and collaboration, and just working with the other members of the team to continue to lay out the groundwork for what has been presented to us to use. I don't know if I'm making sense, but like Barbara said, she's been on the Board of Health. I'm coming into this committee really to see what has been done, add my thoughts on it, and whatever I think, so that we can continue to move forward. I don't know that there's anything really I can bring forward right now until I've seen what everyone has done. And then I can also try to assess resources that are out there, from the government or central bodies that probably know more about this than me, and try to collaborate and coordinate. That's really what I'm good at, just documentation and record keeping, and moving forward that way. Thank you.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? I'll ask it to all three of you. Would you advocate for the removal of NYANZA? Would you advocate for or maintaining the status quo with it being capped?
That's a great question that I probably don't even have the answer to at this point. I'll be very honest with you. I probably just stay with the status quo for now till I really know more on,
David?
Yeah, I would have to know more about, what are the remaining steps for the mitigation and so forth before I felt like I could give an intelligent answer to that question. I mean, it's certainly an unpleasant thought that so much pollution actually does remain deep underground, and therefore it's not gone. So my first instinct would be to say to leave it as it is, but. I think that's...
Be open to it.
Yep.
And then Barbara, your thoughts?
Yes, that's a tough question. But I think I'll also agree with everyone that it is tough to figure out exactly whether to remove or to leave it, because you have to get more information, see what is the impact of it, because we have to get more information on it, find out, like, if we remove it, are there any effects, or if we keep it there, is anything going to come more? Is it really going to come back up and cause more damage? So it's just getting more information, and then hopefully we'll know more.
Another issue that comes at you fast and furious in the town is the discussion of beavers and the landfill, and how the beavers can affect the gases in the landfill. What is your knowledge, Nikki, on the landfill in Ashland and some of the opportunities?
So I don't really know much about the environment, and I'm going to put that out there. I walked up to town hall one day because I just thought, oh, you know what, I'm in healthcare, and this is Board of Health, and I've been doing this for years, and I just want to volunteer some hours to this. And then I was told I had to campaign. I'm like, wait, what? I just want to give some hours. Why do I have to campaign? I have 2 hours in a day. Can I just do something behind the scene, you know? So really, this is out of my place. I'm not a politician. I just know that I'm great at patient care. I'm great at health. I'm great at public health, you know. So if you ask me about the landfill, do I know? Probably not. But what I'm going to do is walk into Board of Health, learn,
Good.
read, and contribute. But whatever I'm great at, I'll tell you what I feel about it. Okay? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Barbara, your thoughts on the landfill? And
It's a good question, which I also don't have much information on that. But it's also something that, you know, we'll need to get more information on it, because I don't have the full details of like the aspect of it and how much damage they're causing. But like Nikki said, you know, we're all here volunteering time, so if it's something that we need to look into, we can look into it, find out what the damage is that it's causing and how we can move forward from there.
great, good. And David, your thoughts?
Yes, it's an interesting question. Definitely not one that I had anticipated. So I think I will, first of all, echo my 2 fellow candidates and say that this is outside of my area of expertise or considerable, you know, or knowledge. But I think John probably posed the question because it's illustrative of the fact that there are lots of things that come at you out of left field when you end up on the Board of Health, and that you have to be in a position to make adjustments and bone up on the appropriate amount of knowledge pretty quickly. So that's what I'm prepared to do. Now I'll have to go and do some research on beavers and
Join me, guys.
Yes. Sorry for the difficult question, but it does come at you. Another big issue that has always been with the Ashland Board of Health has been tobacco regulations. Ashland was one of the industry leaders on toughening up tobacco requirements, and more importantly, in the last couple of years, vaping requirements. What are your concerns as candidates for the Board of Health on vaping and tobacco? Nikki, we'll start with you.
This is a very ambiguous question for me, only because I do understand that, you know, people also have to do what they want to do. But being a healthcare professional first, I really stand with, you know, tightening up the regulations really for tobacco, and following up on whatever resources we have out there from the bodies that be. People, again, I do know that there are regulations stipulating where people should smoke, what age, like there are things really bordering issues like that, and that's what I tend to stick. I'm a very, very policy and procedure-driven person, very documentation-driven as well. So whatever has been researched upon, whatever policies have been researched upon and documented that we should follow is what I think I always stick with. So in as much as my personal beliefs really are to tighten tobacco regulations because of the detrimental effects, you know, to health, also of the the stance that things just have to be done appropriately and accordingly with the way that it has been drafted to be followed. Yeah.
Thank you. Barbara?
So it's a good question, tricky, but so being in the health fields, I do know what smoking does, to your health. It doesn't matter whichever way you use, whether you're vaping or you're just smoking tobacco. So it is one of the things that I have a passion of, making sure that we're ensuring the policies, the rules and regulations are being followed. Also, especially when it comes to selling the cigarettes. I know, recently we've had a few issues here in Ashland with some of our stores selling to minors, and I have an issue with that, because I have a 14-year-old at home, and I don't want him to walk into a store and be able to just buy cigarettes just to, because the store is able to do that without asking for IDs. So I think it is really a good thing for us to maintain, to make sure we are following that the rules are being maintained by, and if they're not, consequences should be followed.
Good, thank you. And last one, David?
Yes, I mean, tobacco and nicotine use, vaping, there are demonstrated health risks that go along with these, and so I think it is certainly in Ashland's best interest to continue to follow the path that we've had mostly across the country, certainly in Ashland, of trying to prevent young people from picking up a habit that will exact tremendous costs of their health and, quite honestly, to the healthcare system. So, whatever can be done to make sure that local merchants are adhering to the rules and are held accountable for that, I think is definitely the best for the town and its residents. I think that sums up my position.
That's a good one. As we put COVID in the rearview mirror, hopefully, and we move on, I think we've all mentioned as we were talking during this debate, and we, talking about 8th grade children, 14-year-old children, coming out of COVID, just one man's opinion, and it's my question, is these kids were locked down. They were locked in the room. They went to school via Zoom meetings. Is there a mental health crisis brewing with young adults and teenagers in this country? And what are your concerns as candidates for the Board of Health? Start with you, David.
I think it's a tricky one to answer because it happens to coincide with the increased use of electronics, including cell phones and online social media. And, the youth are always rapid adopters for those sorts of things in the first place. And there's plenty of evidence that suggests that there are problematic interactions, risks to the health of young people when they engage too much in social media use, especially when it comes at the expense of normal social interactions. So this is another case where, we're forced to pit two things that we valued against one another, where we value the physical safety of our children with respect to an highly infectious and dangerous disease, plus the risk that they would introduce to their loved ones, versus their mental health and their education and everything like that. So it really put a lot of people in a difficult position, parents, school teachers or school administrators, town officials, Board of Health officials. So, I think it's fair to say that there is a mental health crisis with America's youth. The exact cause is probably going to be difficult to tease apart, and I don't think it's I think it's especially problematic if you start to introduce other factors like the availability of nicotine and other products like that. There's definitely a lot of correlation there too. So, but I'll leave the rest for my fellow candidates. Thank you.
Nikki, your thoughts on the brewing
Yeah,
mental health crisis?
So, yeah, I'm a mom to 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and COVID-19 was tough for everyone. And I know that because while people were locked in at home, I still had to go to work every day. And like I said in my opening statement, I'm very happy you asked this question because mental health was really a big one at that point. And it was a part that was literally forgotten at the very beginning while we were still trying to struggle with what this virus was. And I know the impact this had on my kids, just staying locked up at home, doing nothing, and like he mentioned, just being on their devices and stuff. I collaborated with lots of organizations, really, for my patients, and I keep speaking about my patients because those are the people I take care of every day, to make sure that we sent out people to them, and they still have those same therapists out there in their homes, really, still talking them through COVID. So I do believe it's on the rise. It's still there. I just don't know how much we're tackling, how much of the problem we are tackling. But absolutely, COVID did bring that a lot. And it's something I think people should it should be brought to the forefront for our residents, our community, to see how we can continually provide this help to people who will need them, that are out there. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Barbara. And then Barbara?
So, yes, I believe COVID did have a big impact on mental health. And it's not just on the kids, even on adults. You're used to going out and doing things, and all of a sudden, it's like even going grocery shopping, most people were just going to the drive-through and picking up stuff. But with the kids, like we said, electronics, we try to limit them as much as we can. But if that's all they have, they had no other socialization that they were doing. They couldn't just go outside and play with their friends. Everything they had to do was on either that laptop or on a computer. So I think it kind of changed their social lives. And already electronics had stopped them from a lot. They, not going to the libraries. Some of them don't even know what a library looks like.
Right.
So I feel like it increased the impact that it had, and hopefully we have to continue looking into it and keeping that in mind.
Good. I'm still trying to lose my COVID-19, so which I got from being locked down. So I'm struggling with that. Just to keep with time constraints and just a simple yes or no answer, would you support Ashland supporting recreational marijuana, Barbara?
That's a tricky one.
It is a tough one.
Yes or no?
With a diagnosis, yes.
Okay.
Backed by a healthcare provider, yes. Recreational, probably not.
Okay. David?
I think it would be contingent on safeguards against youth involvement and a counter education program to make sure that the youth don't see this as something that they should be engaging in before they become adults. In that case, I would at least consider it. I know that there are, and I'm sorry, you asked for a yes or no. I just realized that. But
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So maybe I should stop there.
Yeah.
We got it.
He didn't stop you.
Last question before we go to your closing statements. What one goal do you each individually have if you're elected to a 3-year term to the Board of Health? Start with you, David.
Ooh, a goal. Aside from the mission of the board itself, which is obviously to keep, the town safe, I think, I'm very interested to see what happens with the remainder of the EPA's involvement in the Nyanza project. I'd like to see that through and make sure that reaches a final endpoint for the community that everybody's happy with.
Great. Nikki?
So I don't have one, I probably have 2. One thing I would like to do once I get into the Board of Health, if that was your question, was one to promote public health initiatives. Now, I've had the opportunity to go through the minutes and agenda of the Board of Health just to see and have a better understanding of what we do. And I would really want to speak to the school nurses, the primary school, elementary, secondary, secondary, high school, bring them together just to know what's out there in the community, what their concerns are, and like how we can all together create a healthier place for us all. And then 2 would be to promote health education. I do see the newsletter that comes up from the town manager's office. And I believe that it would be great to have a column from the Board of Health, nothing too much, because I do know lots of information can be very overwhelming to people. So I've learned over the course of my career that information is mostly retained when they're given in tidbit sizes and bullet points. I believe we can have a column on there just to educate people, like when the allergy season is here, just put out some pointers to people just so that they are aware of what to do. I believe at a point in time, everyone will start looking forward to the column and getting to learn 1 or 2 things from the Board of Health every month.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And Barbara, a goal for you for the next 3 years?
I think the main goal that I probably would like to see is, I know we're doing like the vaccinations for the younger generation. I feel like the elderly too, we need to look more into finding ways of making sure that they do get the vaccinations that they need. We have a handful that probably cannot get out of their homes, making sure that the Board of Health helps them out to making sure that if there are some that do need those vaccinations, that we are providing them to them, so that they don't have to worry about finding transportation to go to the doctor's appointment, that it's something that we provide to them.
Wonderful. So we're going to start now with your closing statements. You each have 1 minute to give a closing statement and ask the people of Ashland to vote for you. Barbara, I'm going to call on you first.
Okay, so thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I'm here asking for your votes, and as I continue to be in the Board of Health, I have, it's something that I've always had a passion on and genuinely care for the health issues that we have. So as most of the stuff that we did talk about, I would like to make sure that we have a healthy environment, and it's not just nursing wise. There's a lot involved. We talk about even when people are building, they do have regulations that have to be followed. That certain things have to be done in a certain way. That way, it's not causing damage either to the neighbors or to the environment, making it safer for us and for our future. As much as we love Ashland, we want to maintain it and make it better moving forward.
Great, thank you. And Nikki?
Also, Ashland, I first of all want to thank you for even considering to put me on the ballot paper. I had over 100 signatures. I was really happy to have that. Just like I said, I am not a politician. This is all new to me. I woke up one day and I said it was time to contribute to a town that has supported me a lot. I've been here for, 14 years now. And I felt it was time for me to contribute my own quarter. And then I was told that I had to do this. And I said, okay, we'll do it. So I'm just asking, based on what I've said, I do believe that my skills, expertise, and experience just make me a desirable candidate to be on the Board of Health, in addition to my passion and motivation and determination to just make sure people are fine. I have been here at CVS Ashland. I probably have met most of you. Maybe you've even yelled at me before.
Let's hope not.
But I'm hoping that come May 16th, that everyone can come out in drones and numbers to put me on the Board of Health. And so together we can create a healthier Ashland for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. And David, your closing statement?
I just wanted to thank everybody again for putting this candidates forum on. It was actually a good experience to be able to talk to all of you in the audience. I think John's questions and our responses have illustrated the importance of the Board of Health to the town and the place that it plays in protecting the community from a health standpoint. I honestly think that the voters would be served, the community would be served well by any of us. So I would just urge everybody to get out and vote. And I would thank you if one of those votes was for me.
Very nice. Well, I want to thank all three of you. I mean, stepping up to serve your community, I think, is one of the greatest things that you can do for your community. So I applaud you, and I say it every election cycle. If you don't vote for these three qualified candidates, then you can't complain about anything going forward. So thank you. Yolanda, I think we've got some really great options.
We do. We have some wonderful options, and we can let the public know this as well, and we've mentioned it to some of the candidates. So we did have a third seat open up on the Board of Health. We got a resignation, and what's interesting is because of the timing of that resignation, it's effective as of the day of the election, but we didn't get their name or we didn't get the slot on the ballot. So I would say to all three of you, two of you will be elected on, and it's not just May 16th, but there's also walk-in and early voting. But after that, there will be a third slot. So just know that. And I just want to say this. I think you are all brave for stepping up and running. And as fellow public servants here to you, the town definitely appreciates and will benefit from anything that you do to help our community move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very nice to have you tonight.
Okay, we're going to let you guys go. Thank you so much. John, that was great. Nice job with those questions. It's always...
Oh my God. Jeez.
So as we transition, we are still live as we do this transition. We are not going anywhere. We're going to let our Board of Health candidates step away. We still have a few minutes. We have about 15 minutes, but we're going to start. Before we start, we'll probably bring our school committee candidates on a little bit before that. But John, thoughts on the candidates?
Wow. I mean, I'm very excited for Ashland, the fact that we have such three qualified professional people to serve in an important role in the Board of Health. And it's, you know, if anybody's paid attention to the Board of Health the last 10 years, we didn't have what we had here tonight at this table. And so I think it's a win-win for Ashland. I think it's exciting. Like I said, professional people who believe in process and believe in looking at the facts, and Ashland only benefits from something like that. So I mean, it's really, I'm actually very excited about what I saw here tonight.
Yeah, it was great to hear, and certainly their experience and background. And I would say that I believe some of them have websites. Go check that out. If you still have questions, reach out to them. They all live locally, so I'm sure they're willing to answer any questions that you may have. So just a reminder, we are still live streaming. We're also going out via live on WACA-TV on our government channels. What we're going to do with this is we're doing it separately because we felt that sometimes we've had forums where all the candidates are sitting here and they all get similar questions. And the questions that you just heard for our Board of Health candidates are going to be different than the questions that you hear for our school committee candidates and our for select board candidates later in the evening. Mm-hmm. So it's important to hear what a Board of Health member may have to think about. We did accept questions via our email, and thank you for those who have sent them in. I don't know if we're still checking them. If we didn't get to it, hopefully your questions or thoughts got answered anyway. So the other thing is, John, we're here doing this candidates forum, and we have a few minutes before we start with our school committee members. Mm-hmm. There's something going on at the Corner Spot right now. There's a mental health event going on outside of the Corner Spot. Wonderful. And as often happens here in Ashland, there are so many great things going on at once. And it's done by so many volunteers. And I guess that's the other thing that's always good to talk about as we're having these forums is every member, every person you see, any board you see, school committee, select board, Board of Health, all the other ones, everyone is a volunteer. We're volunteering our time. It was interesting when Nikki said, yeah, I wanted to just volunteer a few hours, and here I am running and I have to campaign. And it is a little different when you're appointed versus when you have to campaign, but
You know, I'm
Your
glad
thoughts on that?
I'm glad you brought up the corner spot because, a little personal, in my day job today, I had a meeting with the city planner of Framingham, and he says to me,
Why don't
hey,
you remind people what your day job is, John?
I work for the MWRTA. I'm the Community Relations Director for the MWRTA, which is the local transit authority here in the Metro West area. And I had a meeting with the city planner of the city of Framingham, and he
Yep.
goes, do you know anything about the corner spot? Because the corner spot is single-handedly one of the greatest things that I've seen. And so I spent 20 minutes telling him about how the corner spot has been a wonderful thing for the town of Ashland, and I strongly recommend any community trying to replicate. I don't think they'll be able to do the job that Beth Reynolds has done with the corner spot, but, I mean, Ashland's getting famous because of what the work has been done on the corner spot.
And we are very fortunate with Beth Reynolds as our economic development director, and she and a group of, I believe, 5 women were on her committee to create it, reach out for the grant funding. We had a $25,000 matching fund from one of the Massachusetts organizations that helps with funding. So that, and then a lot of generosity from our community got the corner spot going. They're going into their 7th season, 6th season.
Has it been that long? Wow.
It's
Yeah.
either 6th or 6th season. And again, it's just great to go. And I know there's always discussion about what's going on there. And as with anything that happens in town, there's going to be those who love it and those who question it. So, but check it out. There's a lot of great things coming there this summer at the corner spot. Another great thing we heard about coming up in September is Ashland Day is back.
Yay. Yay.
I know many people have been looking for that. Ashland Day is happening on, I might not have the correct date, September 23rd, I believe. It's the 3rd or 4th Saturday. It's not the usual Saturday that they have it on because that was a Jewish holiday, so they
Yom
pushed it
Kippur,
out.
right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean,
yeah.
you know, one of the greatest things, I mean, you and I have been involved in the town for decades
A
now.
while.
Decades, too long. I had much more hair when I first started. But, you know, it's always been the can-do spirit of Ashland. And
Yes.
I know every town has its players and, you know, every city has its things. But really, me getting to work in 16 different communities around Metro, there really is no place like Ashland. Good, bad, or indifferent. Ashland is very unique. But the one thing that has always been resonated with me is the can-do spirit of the community. Yeah.
I mean, think about many of the things that we do that are volunteers. Think about our farmers market, right? Farmers market, 12 years ago, a group of people said, hey, we want to start a farmers market, and they got a group of volunteers together, and it's in its 12th season. It's one of the most popular farmers market in the region. I know many communities. Holliston has started theirs, and part of that was based on what we were doing here. They spoke with our farmers market committee and got input on that. We have a great community garden. Again, volunteers doing that said we want a community garden, and I think that's also in its 12th year where they came together, and you have to work on your garden and put in your request, and
It's quite the process.
it
So you're an expert on this more than I.
Well, we'll see.
With the downtown revitalization, all the road work projects,
Yes.
all of the delays and everything, I really think it's going to positively impact the farmers market this coming season.
Well, I think there's many things that are going to positively impact it with, as you said, with the roads being done, with new sidewalks, making it easier for people if they don't park right there to get to the different areas, get to the farmer's market. Yeah, it's still a little bit of a process, and as with anything, it takes a little while, but
Always takes longer than you want, yep.
that too. So we are at the point where all the undergrounding of the utilities, everything is underground in place. We're in the process of making connections or about to make connections to the buildings. Once the buildings are connected, and of course we're working with a variety of utilities, once that is done, then the wires can come down and the poles can come down and the very last finishing touches can come down. I always find interesting when you hear people comment on what's going on, and either they haven't been involved since the beginning, and they didn't hear the whole conversation. I know there's been discussion about the narrowness of the roads now that we have wider sidewalks and parking.
ADA compliance
And
as
it was
well.
one of those things where, right, ADA compliance, where
Which is huge.
by narrowing the roads, it helps diminish and slow down the traffic, which was another complaint people had, was going through town. Oh, it's too, people are driving through downtown too fast. And of course, on the other side of town, we have Route 126, which is another project that's, again, one of those ones that it was probably 5 or 6 years before we saw any visibility, but there was a lot of work that had to get done. Well, John, we're at about 5 of 7, and I see our 2 school committee candidates, so what do I say we invite them up and get that started as well? We won't start right until 7, but this way they can come up, get comfortable.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Sean, good evening, Lori.
Thanks
You know what?
Thanks for coming this evening.
Okay, I'm gonna apologize. I have Laura B. Tosti versus Lori.
It's all good. Laura is the name on the birth certificate.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And
So
I
we're
will-
legal.
And it's the name you'll see on the
on
ballot.
the ballot. There,
Right.
There
But
you
you
go.
can call me Lori.
Well, it's interesting because I took it from the voting list. We had
Yes.
information about what's on the ballot, and
Did you have a moment like I've known her for 20 years and I've been calling her the wrong name the whole time?
well, no, I was in sign making mode, so it didn't
Yeah.
even register until now. I'm looking at it. So the signs that you see are the candidate's name that you will see on the ballot come election day. Okay. Again, we're going to wait just a few more minutes until 7 o'clock. Again, just a reminder, we are doing this live via WACA-TV on the government channels and some other channels. It's also being live streamed, so you may be watching this on your TV or your computer or your telephone. You might be here in Ashland, or you might be across the country, wherever you are, getting to watch this candidate's event. John, I enjoyed that we're getting to do this one together. We haven't
Yeah,
done a lot of
no.
the candidates forums together. It's been different things, or
Well-
I've been running, or you've been running, or
We've had conflicts of interest, or we've had a worldwide pandemic, so.
that helped. That was an issue too, yes.
But, once again, we talk about things that make Ashland unique, and I hope nobody ever takes it for granted, and I can speak to a longtime chair of a school committee, is that the value that WACA brings to our community.
Yes.
And it pains my heart, my good friend Susan Petroni has now stopped doing the Framingham Source. The Metro West Daily News, yes, I said it, John Featherston says it, is no longer a newspaper. Transparency in government, I feel, is a core value, and it's important. And we are very lucky to have Barbara and her team and Paul back there, that we are able to do these types of events. But then all the school committee meetings are broadcast, all of the select board meetings are broadcast, the Board of Health meeting. And you don't assume that every community does that, because I think there's mandates that they do it, but because of staffing, because of regulations, because of money, not all of it's done. And, we got to give a shout out to WACA, because they do a lot with a little, and we're lucky to have them.
Well, and I think the discussion, and not for tonight, but is that a lot of their budget, a lot of their income is going away as people turn off the cable.
Cut the cord,
as people
yeah.
say, well, why do I need to have cable? Why do I need to have my local cable? We'll still work to do live stream, which we do both now, but at some point we have to consider that. How important is our cable station to our community in regards to getting out information and keeping the public informed? Because there are people who don't have a computer, and they only get they only get to see the town meetings and the public forums and things like that on their cable station.
And Mark DeSoni is at all the meetings. It's still very impressive, Mark. Still very impressive. Yeah, so good for you.
Great. Okay, so it is just about 7 o'clock. We are going to get started with our school committee candidates. So just a reminder, we're being live streamed as well as coming out via our cable station. And we're going to move on to our school committee candidates. We have 2 this evening. John, if you would remind us of the guidelines
All
for our
right.
candidates.
Just as a reminder, each candidate will make a 2-minute opening statement to begin. After the opening statement, we'll start asking questions that were previously sent in. The candidate being asked the question will have 90 seconds to answer. If the other candidate wants to respond, you'll get 60 seconds to respond. Is that clear? Okay. If the original candidate wants to respond to the challenge or the follow-up question from the other candidate, you'll get 30 seconds to respond to that. After we've gone through these questions, each candidate will have the opportunity to do a 1-minute closing statement.
That's great. Thank you, John, for reminding that. as I have sat on the school committee many years ago,
Not that long ago.
I have been longer on the select board than I was on school committee by about 4 or 5 years. But school committee is one of those jobs that, again, people don't always understand what it does. But before we start with any questioning, we are going to allow you each to do a 2-minute opening statement. Lori, as you are the incumbent, we're going to have you start, and then Shaun will have you do your 2-minute opening. Okay. Lori?
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Lori Tosti, and I'm a 32-year resident of Ashland, running for re-election to the school committee. I've been on the committee for the past 12 years, and I've been elected chair for the past 10. I first ran because of my passion for education and desire to offer community service with some of the skills I had as an attorney. My husband and I raised 4 children here who are now all adults working in their professional careers. Experiencing preschool through high school with our 4 children who had different interests, challenges, and abilities gave me a lot of insight into the school system. While they were there, I wanted to be part of making our schools the best that they could be for your kids and mine. In the 6 years since they've graduated, I still want to be there making our schools the best they can be. And with my kids grown, I have a unique opportunity to focus on yours. Although some of mine are still in the building, they're just no longer students. When our schools are stronger, our community is better. I do everything I can to still engage with students. I travel with students every year on a service trip with the Make-A-Wish Club, dozens of students doing community service together with me. I've said yes to chaperone to the Model UN and to anyone else who has asked me to come read to a classroom or engage with the students, and I attend every event that I can. Over my long history on the school committee, I've been able to be part of some important steps forward, along with my colleagues and the administration. We brought tuition-free full-day kindergarten. We're getting a new elementary school after securing MSBA funding and community support. We obtained modulars for the Warren School, and we changed school start times when we recognized that the best was for kids. We made it through the pandemic, and we've cultivated excellent relationships with our union, town management, and town government, as well as with each other, allowing us to work collaboratively on many important efforts. The importance of this cannot be overstated. My experience on school committee includes serving on 3 negotiating teams, multiple hiring committees, several subcommittees, and multiple speaking engagements. It's been an honor to have been selected to lead the committee for the past 10 years, and especially in recent years, as my colleagues have acknowledged the unique voice that I bring to the committee. Moving forward, there's still a lot I hope to do. We have a new strategic plan. We have the results of an equity study to implement. We have a new school building opening. We want to improve curriculum and course offerings. We have changing demographics, and there's work to be done in welcoming our neighbors into our system. I would love to continue leading the district as we move forward together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shaun?
Thank you, John, Yolanda, Lori, thank you. Thanks to all of you who are here, who are watching live, who are watching on recording, and who care enough about the town and about the schools to pay attention to this race and to vote. And I hope that you encourage your neighbors and your friends to do the same. My name is Shaun Adamec. I am a Ashland resident, homeowner, a business owner, a longtime community volunteer, and probably most importantly, a parent to a 7th grader, a 6th grader, and a 2nd grader. And that's the perspective, all of those perspectives, I hope to bring to the school committee. A longtime soccer coach. I've coached dozens, if not hundreds, of young students. It's been a pleasure and a real joy to see them develop and grow as kids along with my own. My business is in the communications space. I like to say that I help people talk about themselves in ways that make it more likely that audiences do whatever it is we want them to do. So sometimes that's support a cause or donate money or donate time. I work 100% with nonprofits, and many of those are education. In fact, most of those are education focused. So I count among my clients school districts, schools, school leaders, teachers unions, state boards across the country, and so on and so forth. And I'm a communications expert, and so I hope to bring that perspective as well. But I also sit on the board of the Partnership for the Future of Learning, which is a national grassroots network of advocates that seek to inject equity into every part of our education system, from decision-making to instruction. But as I said, most importantly, I think the perspective that I hope to bring is that of a parent with kids in schools now, and who are challenged with the things that kids today are challenged with that are new and emerging. So thank you.
Great. Thank you both so much for being here. Thank you for those opening statements. We have a few questions that have been submitted, as well as a few others that we've pulled together for you. So we're going to start with this one. What do you see are the greatest challenges that the school committee has to face, and how have you prepared to be able to address them? And Shaun, we're going to start with you.
Was it a certain number of challenges, or just greatest
Just
challenges?
greatest.
You know, I think, look, we all lived through COVID. In many ways still are. Had a COVID scare at my house recently. COVID learning loss is real. And not just the learning loss, but the social emotional impacts to our students, and frankly to our faculty and staff, are real as well, and will be long lasting. We're also, I think it's fair to say, a town in transition. You know, we are, I bought my house from empty nesters. So did all of my neighbors. And it shows in the schools, the modular classrooms at Warren, the, Mimms, which is overgrown. Obviously, thankfully, we're able to have a new building next year, which my youngest son will be the first, in the first class in. But these are challenges that we will experience as a town for years to come. And so I think, what have I done to prepare? I think all of the things that I mentioned earlier, in terms of my biography and my qualifications. I think the greatest thing that I do to prepare is I talk to my kids every day that come home. I unpack their backpacks, I pack their lunches and their snacks and their water bottles, and I talk to them about their days.
Okay, great. Lori, same question to you. What are the challenges? What's the greatest challenge you see for the school committee, and how have you prepared to help address them?
Well, definitely the COVID situation is top of mind for me and everybody on the school committee, identifying where the gaps are, the academic gaps, but also the mental health gaps. We talked a little bit about that during the Board of Health discussion. Identifying those gaps and making sure that we have the personnel and the right support and the right resources to address them. We've started that work. We've increased our counseling staff at the schools. We've used some new assessment tools to try to understand how kids are doing academically. So things are in motion to try to identify where some of the gaps are, but we all have been through COVID together. It was real, and there are long and lingering effects, and supporting each other and making sure that we have the right tools in place. Other things, changing community diversity. The community has changed a lot since I started this job. I think it was over 90% white in the schools when I first started, and now it's 58% white. And with that, we need a lot of English language learner staff, which we've increased, and that is ongoing work. We have more than 100 languages spoken in our schools, so we need support for kids and families. We need to outreach to those families so they feel welcome in our schools. And then I guess a third one, which is it's something we've all talked about, but it's been something that I've cared a lot about, is making room in our budget for some extras like electives at the high school and other things to step things up a little bit. We do the core things well, but we can do more.
Okay, great. So Lori, you brought up one. We have a very diverse school population. As you said, it has changed. And so how can our schools work as a school committee to create policy that supports those diverse students? And Lori, you can start on that one.
Well, when it comes to policy, one thing that we are doing now as a result also of the equity study is we're starting to look at anything that we have in writing, handbook, policy, plans, instructions to make sure that we're using the right language so that we are relating to the people in our district and they understand that we understand them. And we're making that effort. In addition to that, we are making sure that we have the right personnel. I mean, there's, when you're asking, kindergarten teachers who half the class doesn't speak English, and there's one teacher who has 24 kids in there, they need support. They need additional support, people to come into the room and to assist with the students, and for the good of the students so that they feel comfortable and they integrate into our system and they feel welcome here. And it really is from everybody in the whole organization has to participate in this effort. My time is up for it.
Okay. Okay. Shaun, your thoughts on our diverse student population and how, as a school committee, you can create policy to support them all?
So I'll start by saying that the growing diversity in our town certainly presents challenges to the school district, but I think our diversity is our strength. I think approaching it from that perspective helps to set policy. I have a client in Portland, Maine, that's a school, it's actually a school within a school. In Portland, for those of you who don't know, it's a refugee resettlement community. A lot of East African families, primarily. And I went to a community event, actually facilitated a community event with them, and they're, in a small school, there's 47 languages spoken. And there were translators across the room, and as the facilitator, I spoke, paused, and then you could hear and it was beautiful. And the way they got folks to the room was having a potluck, a culturally appropriate, potluck. Folks brought their food from different cultures. Ultimately, that's an example of getting kids what they need to thrive. And that, frankly, is another way of saying equity. Equity is not equality. It is disproportionately providing resources to kids as they need it, and to staff. So with a growing diverse population, families come to Ashland with different needs, and I think it's the school committee's challenge, but frankly opportunity to recognize those needs and learn more about those families and their cultures, and make sure that we embrace them as Ashland residents, just as the rest of us are.
Great. Okay, I just want to remind both of you that Barbara's showing her sign, so please pay attention to the timing. So you both talked about financing and budget. Budget is a big issue. Finances are a big issue. We've had a number of questions, not so much for school committee, which I always find interesting that the budget questions don't go to the school committee. They always go to the select board. But as anyone in town knows, the school committee budget is the largest portion of our town budget. They have the most employees. So my first question to both of you is, what is your understanding of the status of the school budget right now and meeting the needs of our students? I'm going to start with you, Shaun.
Sure. Well, two different questions. What's the status of our budget, and how does it meet the needs of our students?
Yep.
Ashland is not unique in that anyone involved in the budget process will say it's not enough, and they're not wrong. Our students, our faculty are always doing more with less, and that's frankly a reality. Ashland is not we've experienced an attempt at a tax override in the past. I'm sure there will be one in the future. Frankly, I'd support it if it was primarily dedicated to education. All you have to do is walk through some of our buildings and see that we're not necessarily meeting the needs of our students nor faculty, or have a conversation with any of them to hear the same.
Okay. Lori, same question, same amount of time.
Yeah, so the budget presentation, if you've seen it online or if you've gone to town hall, it's been about the same for the last several years, and that, we're able to get together as a group of administrators and school committee and narrow it down to make sure we're doing what's right for kids. And the most important things are covered. And we haven't had to make any cuts, and we're known as a district that does a lot with a little. As a matter of fact, we show up at the bottom of list for pupil spending, and we show at the top of many lists for outcomes. On the other hand, every year also there is a large list of unfunded needs. And we all know the challenges of getting funding for that. There's advocating at the state level. There's discussions that we have at the town level. There's discussions that we have amongst each other, because sometimes departments have priorities and they believe that their priority is the most important one, and we have to make difficult decisions there. So I would like to see us to be able to find creative ways to get more funding to do more of the things that are on the unfunded list. So I think we can be proud of what we're doing, but it's not enough.
So tying into that question, Shaun, you already said that if an override came about, you'd support that. Lori, you don't have to answer that. We also have a balance here in town. Our student population is actually lower than our senior population. So as a school committee member, your job is to advocate. How do you continue to advocate for your students with that senior population who wants to stay in Ashland but is struggling to do that? Lori, you get to start.
Well, I mean, I don't think it has to be, one against the other or pitting, our needs against the needs of the seniors. I think we're all one community, and we have to find a way to make sure that everybody's needs are taken care of. When we support education, I think we all do better. This community is a better place when the kids are well educated, well cared for, and it's also a better place when our seniors feel like they can live comfortably within their income. And I'm not wanting to make it a conversation of us or them. We tend to invite seniors in whenever we can so they can come and enjoy our plays, and we try to reduce the cost of that. I mean, we do what we can from the school level. When we're advocating for funding, we're certainly never doing it from a space of trying to take it away from anybody else who needs it. I am very close to being a senior citizen myself. So, I think that it's part of living in a community where we have to be mindful of the needs of everybody, but also mindful of the benefit that it brings when we educate our students to the best of our ability. It really benefits everybody, and including the seniors, for house values and all the other things that make us better.
Okay, Shaun, same
Yeah,
question.
I couldn't agree more. It is, I think, a false duality to say that when people vote for something like a tax override, or frankly a candidate, that they're doing it only for their own self-interest. We are part of a community. Ask anybody in real estate, and they'll tell you that one of the best drivers for property values is the quality of the school district, and that benefits everyone. And so, literally everyone, not just in home values, but in tax base, which provides more resources to do everything we want in town. And so, I think senior citizens in our community understand that, and you've seen that, frankly, by their support for the ongoing needs of our school district. And so I don't think that will be if it came to something like a tax override, I don't think it would be a difficult idea to sell.
Shaun, I'm just going to double check. Is your green light on?
Now it is.
There we go.
Have I been muted this entire time?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I think other mics
Okay.
were loud enough, but I won't make you
Let's
go
start
back
over.
and repeat everything. You talked about unfunded. Now, we all know that some things are unfunded. We also know that we get what we call unfunded mandates from the state down to our schools. Shaun, I'm going to start with you. How can we address that, and how would you plan on working to address that?
Sure. The first thing I'll say is that, as Lori mentioned, there are creative ways the tax base is not the only way of funding school districts, and any leader in any town will tell you that. Frankly, I think that Ashland is well positioned to attract philanthropic dollars. The good news is that since COVID, and COVID wasn't the only variable, but since COVID, education funders in particular have loosened the reins a bit when it comes to philanthropic funding of education initiatives, really of funding of everything. And that's good for a town like Ashland. That said, we're not an experiment, which some foundations are looking to do, but we could be an incubator for good ideas. And so that's one way of addressing unfunded mandates. I'm not foreign to unfunded mandates. I spent 10 years in government and politics running campaigns, and they are a reality that we don't always have a say in when they come down, but we do have a voice in the state legislature, and as importantly, have a voice with, as I mentioned, some of those funding sources that don't come from tax dollars.
Okay. Lori?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the way that I've approached it since I've been on school committee, when things like that are happening, we reach out to our legislators. We have Day on the Hill where school committee members can go for the day and share our concerns. We have collaborations. I've collaborated with chairs from other communities, and we talk about the challenges to our districts and how we can creatively approach them together. And as you know, Yolanda, for being on the school committee, I mean, a lot of it is really just out of our control. So you're left with, either having to make some very difficult decisions or having to engage in some kind of creative, grant process funding or community support. Or sometimes you do have to just wait until sometimes they realize that the unfunded mandate was not the best decision, and sometimes they go away.
Okay, good. Going from unfunded mandates to buildings. We all know we're building a new elementary school. This is the second building in the last 17 years that the town has built. What are your thoughts on one? Well, I'll break it up. First question is thoughts on the new Mimms. Good, bad, or just what do you hope to see with it opening? Lori, I'll start with you.
Oh, I'm so excited about it. I think it's amazing. I've taken several tours. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's so exciting for our community, for our staff and our students to have this brand new building. It was so wonderful to have the community support, and all the work that was done behind the scenes and from the building committee has been absolutely outstanding. But I think it's also going to give us an opportunity to have the kind of programming that we want at that level. It's designed so that the grades can work together. There are a lot of educational spaces designed for collaboration. There are a lot of green spaces. I mean, it really, I think, is one of the most exciting things to happen to this community in a long time. So I have nothing but wonderful things to say about it, and I'm so appreciative that the community supported it.
Okay, Shaun?
I agree. As I mentioned, my youngest son will be entering into the new Mimms building. I'm excited as his dad. He's really excited. As a student, we see it, going up. I think, the whole community really owes Paul Kendall and those who've been as intimately involved in its development a debt of gratitude for his and their work. And, as Lori mentioned, for the community for supporting it. It's not a small project. And so very excited for it. I also, education is not I think all of us would acknowledge, a one-size-fits-all venture. And that leaning into those principles often requires different physical spaces. And the buildings of 100 years ago don't necessarily allow for that as easily, and this one will. So I'm excited for that.
Good. So getting a new elementary school, we have a high school that's only about 17 years old, but we know that the middle school has some issues. We know that the Pitaway and the Warren have some issues. Thoughts on what as a community we should be looking at next? And I know if you're not quite as intimate, that's okay, but Shaun, go ahead. What do you think? What should be?
You mean in terms of priority?
In terms of priority and looking at our buildings and
Yeah. What
we could ask the community for.
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a son right now at Warren. All of the remaining buildings are aging, and they're showing their age. And the town has done a laudable job in accommodating. You see the modular classrooms. We make use of the space that we have. In terms of priority, I would actually hesitate to say that right now, because there's a process for assessing that. There's a process for a reason for assessing that. And I'd want to see what that process showed. Frankly, one of the first steps in the process, as we saw with Mimms, was determining whether or not we can renovate or adjust the current building versus building a brand new one. And I frankly don't know those details. I'm not sure anyone does for the remaining buildings. And so those are details that I'd be interested in seeing.
Okay, Lori?
Yeah, and there is a group that gets together from the town side and the school side, and they assess all the capital needs and try to prioritize what needs to be done. But at least from the school side, I mean, we do have roofs that are going to need to be replaced. We have, there is something that's going to have to be done about the Warren modulars at some point. As our enrollment increases, we're going to have to make plans for increasing that space. So the priority at the moment, I think, depends on so many different things. It depends on where the available funds are. It depends on who we're competing against for those funds. It depends on what the most immediate need is. If we have an enrollment issue like we did with the Warren when we had to put the modulars in, there was really no other choice that we could make. We needed space for kids. Right. So those are the conversations that we have when we're making those decisions. But I will say, in order to get anything done in that space, the collaborations that we've developed over the years with the school and the town and the way that we've been working together have made a lot of those things possible, or at least have them run a lot more smoothly than they otherwise would have. So a lot of us have put the work in to make sure that when something like that needs to happen, that we're in a place of collaboration and trust so that we can get the best things for our community.
I'm going to go step back to the budget question. I'm going to ask you each a slightly different question. So, Lori, for you, how have you seen the budget change as you've been on the school committee? You've been on there 12 years. How have you seen that budget change in those 12 years?
Well, it's not so much the budget has changed, Yolanda. I would say more the budget process has changed. Because the budget, we have a certain process every year that we do internally. The administrators get together, they tell us their needs. The school committee has an opportunity to vet that, make some changes, and then we're given a number from the town, and we have to work within our budget. From the recession all the way back, there are things that we've never recovered from. We don't have supply lists that we used to have back then. We don't have the same custodial staff that we used to have back then. So that's where I'd like to see some changes in getting some of those things back. But in terms of the budget itself hasn't changed. We have fixed costs with employees, and that's our biggest expense. And then there's only so much room to work with the rest of the money. The process has changed in terms of the work that we put in with the town and our policies. And it used to be, as you might recall, we would come to the boards and we would beg for something, a STEM program in the middle school, or a new this or a new that, and it would be a fight, and maybe we'd get it and maybe we wouldn't. And we worked hard to put a lot of things in place so that, we understand what's available. And when there is a real need, we do approach the town, and because of the relationship that we've developed, we've had those needs addressed. So it's the process that's actually improved a lot, but we still haven't been able to move forward with a lot of the financial challenges. And that's just a result of, you only have access to the money that's coming in.
Right. So, Shaun, for you, what experience can you bring to this budget process should you be elected to the school committee?
Sure. Well, I mentioned that so my business, I work across issue space. I have the benefit of choosing the issues that I work on, and they tend to reflect the issues that I care most about. And so it's not a surprise that the majority of my clients are education focused. I mentioned that some of them are school districts, some of them are schools, school leaders, teachers unions, and advocacy organizations. So budgeting is native to me. I've helped many of those organizations either work through a budget process, advocate for their interests as part of those budget processes, and it's worth saying at every level, at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level.
Okay, great, thank you. A couple more questions that were submitted to us. Are you concerned about the current multifamily development projects' impacts on the school populations? And Shaun, I'll start with you on that one.
Concerned. I think we should welcome all new residents of our town. And it's not the school committee's role to approve new developments. What I will say is that any impact on the population of our schools is going to have an impact on everything else in our schools. The staffing needs, the physical space needs, the budgeting needs. So I don't love the connotation of the word concerned, but I'm certainly mindful of it. And as a resident, I don't love new big developments, frankly, because of spacing issues. We are a town that enjoys a lot of open green space. I think it defines a lot of it. You spent some time talking about the corner spot, frankly. Right. And that tends to get squeezed with a rising population. And so I think those are things to be mindful of.
Okay. Lori, same question for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just one piece of something that can happen to change the demographics or the enrollment in the community. There's lots of other things that are happening too. There's immigration, there's people moving in and out for different reasons. And you can only do so much planning, and we do call in the experts to try to do the best that we can in understanding what to expect. But sometimes it's not accurate. I mean, the influx that we expected from the Cirrus apartments, for instance, and the taxation on our system in terms of enrollment and crowding, that didn't really happen. So, right. You can only plan for so much, and then when it does happen, we need to make sure that we have the space, we need to make sure that we have the teachers, we need to make sure that we have the support staff if there are people moving in that need additional support. And there's no real way to predict who's moving into where. So, I mean, I do think we have to be mindful when we're planning, and of course, we're not the ones that are doing the planning, we're just the ones responding to it. And we do try to plan ahead and know what to expect by doing this analysis, but sometimes it's not entirely accurate, so we're responding to the moment.
Okay. Next question, and this is more specific regarding our high school. Do you support the community service requirements for graduation? And I believe the school committee just made some decisions on that. Lori, why don't you start on that one?
Well, I'll start on that because I voted on that issue. And first of all, I will tell you that every single person on school committee, including myself, is very much in favor of community service and very much expects everybody in our high school to have some exposure to community service. And in fact, the plan is moving forward that we expect everybody in our entire district to have some exposure to community service. I mean, we are doing community service in our roles here, and some of us do it outside of our roles, myself included, traveling with students to do service trips. I mean, we are all about community service. What was problematic for us as a committee and for the administrators in the schools and for the people at the site council was that using it as a graduation requirement had a lot of layers of difficulty to it. And as our community became more diverse, it became a challenge for even more of our students to get this done, because there are many students that, for instance, have to go to work after school and don't have the luxury of being able to go volunteer somewhere. So this really was a move to remove it from graduation requirement to make it more fair to people who couldn't do it, to make it more workable for the administrators who are finding this kind of an impossible task, and then more meaningful for the people who are actually doing the community service, because it became somewhat of a check the box kind of a thing rather than a really meaningful opportunity. But we have our administrators in every building getting back to us with how they can age appropriately require every student to have some exposure to community service, and it's going to be part of our next strategic plan. So community service is not gone, and it's not something that we don't believe in. We have just eliminated the graduation requirement.
Okay. Shaun?
I think that the decision to eliminate it as a graduation requirement was regrettable. It's not a decision I would have supported.
Okay.
I think for a couple of reasons, but primarily because of the reasons presented for why it was eliminated. I don't think that we ought to eliminate things for the purpose in response to students not fulfilling them. I think that that is on us as a district. I think that the equity issues are real and require attention and adjustment and revision, and that's on us as a district. That's frankly responding to the needs of our students. I had a community service requirement as as a high schooler. It was one of the most important things that I did as a student. Frankly, shaped my career and my life. And I think it's worth noting that removing the requirement, first of all, it was 25 hours, which is the lowest among surrounding towns. And I think it's worth noting that it was not a decision that other towns in our immediate area made either.
Okay. Any discussion back? Lori, any?
Well, I will just say that, I mean, it's been a years-long conversation. It was unmanageable for the staff, so even if we say, the kids, if they weren't doing it, we should make them do it, it's problematic when you have the adjustment counselors and the guidance counselors who are also responsible for lots of, mental health issues and all of the other challenges that we're having, trying to chase people down for their hours and that sort of thing. So I was on the site committee for years, sort of listening to this conversation, so I really got a chance to hear what a struggle it was for them and our professionals telling us that this is not working for kids. And again, finding another way to make sure that we are introducing everybody to community service, because that's what makes us tick as a community. It's part of everybody's civic responsibility, but the way that we were doing it did not have the intended meaning.
Any rebuttal to that, Shaun? No? Okay, good. Always good to have some discussion. Okay, this is another one that came in through the email, and I find this one interesting because I know we've changed it over the many years. The question is, how do you feel about the proposed or possibly implemented changes to the clocker symbol for the schools and sports? I started with, I think it's on you, Shaun, to start with that one. Any thoughts on that?
Sure.
Being involved in sports?
As the communications guy and being involved in sports, sure. I think it's a unique identity, frankly, the clockers. I know that there is work underway. You mentioned the symbol, so I'm not sure if the question is particular to the logo or not.
It says to the clocker symbol for the schools and for the schools and sports.
Yeah.
A clock.
The logo.
It's a clock. The logo is a clock.
Clock with legs.
Well,
look,
which has also changed over the years.
As a branding professional,
Go ahead.
I agree with the importance and, frankly, in many cases, the urgency of creating a consistent look and feel and tone and voice across a brand. And like it or not, the school district is a brand. So, fully support that effort. As part of that discussion, there were some murmurs. Are we still the clockers? Are we going to be the clockers? Is that going to be? I like the clockers. No strong opinion on changing the clockers, or wouldn't look to do that as a member of the school committee. But the current effort is about brand consistency, and I think that's important.
Okay, Lori?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the use of the clocker brand has to do with the clock being invented here in Ashland, so I think it's wonderful that it ties back to that, and we've been the clockers the entire time I've been here. I don't have a particular problem with it. However, if there's something that the community wants to do differently, and all the effort right now is putting into making our branding just be more consistent, because it got a little out of control with people using their own version of what the clocker should look like. So right now we have a branding company working with us to try to make sure that everyone's consistently using the same image. But beyond that, there is a bigger conversation about, are we the clockers? Are we the clockers forever? Is the community looking for something else? And those conversations haven't really started yet. And it is like a year or two long process, really, to get the engagement from all the different people that might want to have input on it. I don't feel particularly strongly about it. It's not like it's an offensive, brand that we need to get rid of immediately.
We're not the Redskins.
Yeah, I there are a lot more things that I'm really worried about making sure that we do before that.
And certainly just the clock itself has transitioned. I mean, I think when I was originally, my kids were originally in school, it was just a clock. I don't know when it got legs. At some point, I'm like, see a clock walking around. I'm like, oh, okay, So the idea of being consistent, I think, is. I read that question. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was being discussed.
Yeah, as a branding matter, but there will be a bigger conversation about it moving forward.
Yeah, and I think at least we're not the pickles.
At
Right.
least.
There is a school that
Could be
are the
worse.
fighting pickles. So, No sports teams, but they're the Fighting Pickles. Ask me later how I know.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So we have still about 5 minutes. I want to talk about staffing. Everyone knows that right now in our community, in our state, around a lot of places, we're having issues with staffing. What is the largest challenge? Lori, I'm going to ask this question to you, and then I'll ask it slightly different to Shaun. What is the largest challenge we have right now with getting staff into our schools?
The way that I understand it, it has a lot to do with the budget situation. For instance, we really could use some full-time substitute teachers that are there all the time to be moved around into the different buildings because there's a need. But in order to pay those salaries, we would have to cut something else out of the budget, or we would have to come back to the town to ask for more money. And so things like that aren't possible yet because we don't have access to the funds that we would need to do that. Same when it comes to, and we do the best that we can when it becomes apparent that we need to raise a salary in order to attract ESPs or people that are our support staff that maybe aren't getting as paid as well here as they are in other places. We do what we can to meet that challenge. But from my understanding, the challenges are more related to budget issues than they are people not wanting to work. I was just at the Warren School the other day, and the assistant principal was telling me how much everybody loves working there, and it's such a great place to work. And I don't think we struggle in that area. I think it's just having the funds to hire the people that we need. There's a long list of unfunded positions that we could fill if we had the funds.
Okay. So Shaun, thinking about staff, what experience could you bring? Obviously, budget might, you can help figure out the budget, but in regards to potentially finding ways to bring new staff in, either without budgets or with funding or.
So another issue not unique to Ashland, there's a national teacher shortage. There are a lot of reasons for it. We could spend an entire evening talking just about those. You asked about my experience. One of the things that I do in my company is talent recruitment for organizations, including all the education organizations that are clients of mine. There is significant research now that frankly didn't exist 10, 15 years ago that shows the benefits to students to have educators that look and sound like them. With an increasingly diverse student population, I think that's important, not only for those students, but what the research also shows is that, ta-da, everybody benefits when that's the case. So it is not, in my experience, enough to post a position and watch the resumes come in. There's proactive work that needs to be done to go find the candidates and the professionals that are going to serve the needs of our students. It is, we are not a town that wants someone who needs a job. We want people who want this job. And it's frankly on those searching to fill those vacancies to do everything they can to make that happen.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that. During our break, we were talking about volunteers. And I remember when I was on the school committee and there were people looking to run, and the question was, how much time does it take? What does it mean to be on a school committee? I'm laughing because there's someone here in the audience who I was on the school committee with. What is your understanding, and I'm going to ask Shaun this question of you first, and then Lori again, I'm going to slightly adjust it for you. What is your understanding of your time commitment as a volunteer to be a school committee member?
Well, it's more than a soccer coach, aware of that. And it's more than the every other Thursday meetings, also aware of that. I have the benefit of having friends on the committee, close friends, and so I'm aware of the process, including the committees and the unofficial duties. Lori mentioned, the building tours, the conversations at the bagel table. So aware of all that, ready for it, prepared for it, and I have the capacity for it.
Okay. Lori, how has your volunteer time changed since you first stepped on the committee to now? As it relates to your role as a school committee member?
How's my volunteer time changed? Just as it relates just to the committee, not
Yeah.
outside of the committee.
Right.
Well, certainly in my personal life, it's changed over the last 6 years because my kids are adults and I have found myself with more time to commit to other things going on in school. I can volunteer for any hiring committee. I can volunteer for subcommittees, and I have. I can ask Mr. Kendall for a tour of the building when I feel like I need to know what's going on there. I can say yes to any time I get asked to do something at the schools, and that's increased. I can go away for 5 days with a group of 40 kids and not have to worry about who's taking care of my own kids. So most of the changes are more due to the changes in my own personal life. The requirement certainly hasn't changed. What the requirement is, honestly, there's a minimum requirement that we're all expected to do. We go to the meetings, we go to town meeting, and then just like any other job, there are people that go over and above and do a lot more and can donate thousands and thousands of hours to this job over time, or you can get by, and go to your 2 meetings and, just kind of coast through. So it all kind of comes down to what you're bringing to the position. And, I like I said, I did as much as I could when I was busy with 4 kids. And since then, I've been able to do even more as far as that goes.
Good. Good. Okay. Well, it is about, wrong thing. 7:45. Yes, 7:45. We're going to go into your closing statements. You each have 1 minute, and this is your opportunity to talk to the voters one last time and say why you're running and why they should support you in the ballot. And let's see, we started with Shaun, right? You did the first opening statement? No, Lori did. Okay, so Lori did, so Shaun, you're going to get to do the first closing statement, and then Lori.
Great. Thanks to you both. And again, thanks to all who are watching and who are watching on recording. My kids come home every day. I unpack their backpacks. I charge their Chromebooks. I make their lunches, their waters, their snacks, although I've recently delegated that to one of my own sons as a chore of his, which is one of the best decisions I ever made. I talk to them about their days. I talk to them about the challenges that they experience, the teachers they like, the classes they don't so much like, and what they're going through. That's the perspective that I hope to bring to the school committee. Students today, frankly, are experiencing challenges and opportunities that just weren't the case 10, 15, 20 years ago. COVID learning loss, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, the integration of technology, the increasing challenges regarding mental health, anxiety, and depression. And those are the things that my own kids are experiencing every day. I think the governmental bodies in our town ought to be made up of those that are most immediately impacted by the decisions that are made, and that's why I'm running.
Great, thank you. Lori?
So again, thank you for this opportunity. I am running because personal reasons are that I get a lot out of being able to volunteer my time for this. It makes me feel good. It's something that I can do to give back to my community, and it's the best use of the skill set that I have. That's why I do it personally. For the benefit of the community, I think that my unique voice, having graduated kids all the way through the system, having, it's community members that vote for school committee, it's all of our taxpayer dollars that support what we do here and support our budget. And I have a teacher in the schools. My daughter-in-law's an ESP. My other daughter's a coach. And it's been my job for 12 years to understand what's going on in the schools. So I think the work that I've done along with my colleagues, I certainly have never done anything single-handedly, but I have been part of a team that has a lot to be proud of. I've been honored to be a leader on the committee, to be a woman leader for 10 years, which has been, really, really nice honor. And I would love to continue working with everybody that I've been working with and fostering the relationships that we've fostered. And I would appreciate your vote.
Great. Thank you both so much. I have to say, it's nice to see a contested race even with an incumbent, and I know that's hard sometimes as an incumbent, but I think as a community, we are stronger if there are choices, and if there are choices from different perspectives and different abilities. So thank you both for stepping up to run. Thank you both for coming here this evening.
Thank you.
John, we are going to transition to our last group of candidates. You guys are free to step away.
Thank you.
Get
Thank
some
you.
water, maybe something stronger.
Have a good night, everybody. Just as a reminder, as we make this transition, this evening's forum is being broadcast live on WACA-TV and is also being streamed live on Facebook Live. After this evening, the 3 sections will be replayed separately so that they can easily replayed before you make your decisions at the polls. So that was pretty impressive. Huh?
Yeah, very nice choices, I think. It's great to hear from the experience as well as someone willing to step up and new. I'll tell you, some of those budget conversations, I don't know if they were nightmares or just memories from sitting on the school committee.
I remember those days in the basement with the finance committee and
Yeah.
making those. I remember when the STEM vote came up. I was on the board at the time of the STEM vote, and I was surprised at my time that some of my colleagues on the board they didn't think it was a great idea, and I was just like, come on, this is a no-brainer. We'll find the money, you know.
Yeah.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Yeah.
And Lori brought up something very interesting. So I've been on the select board 11 years. I took 5 years off between that and my time on the school committee. And she's right. I think as a town and as government, our community is working better. We're working hand in hand. We have a good relationship between the school committee and our superintendent and the select board and our town manager. So it's nice to see, and I expect that conversation will continue, and certainly that work will continue. And certainly this budget season showed how that conversation moved things along. We first started looking at our budget. We thought we were going to be about $1.5 million short, and by looking at different things and making some hard decisions, some things that might have been a good thing to do, it was decided not to, but we now are going into town meeting, which, just for everyone's reminder, town meeting is Wednesday, this Wednesday, May 3rd, starting at 7 o'clock at Town Hall, at the Ashland High School. Make sure you get there a little bit before, because our moderator starts us promptly at 7. You can get there at least by quarter of, park, walk in, see your neighbors, review. You can review the town meeting warrant articles. They're already up on the town website, so go ahead and take a look, and hopefully we'll be seeing some of you or a lot of you at town meeting on Wednesday. Okay, now our third group. We've wrapped up our school committee, and we're going to go on to our last candidates, which is for select board. We're going to invite our select board members on up. Please come and sit where your name is.
Good evening.
Good evening. Let's see. Okay, thank you all for coming and being willing to participate. I think we're going to start this one a few minutes early, John. What do you think?
I think we're going to need the time on the back end.
An important
so,
one that
yes.
has going to have a lot of questions. Thank you all who have submitted questions. I've accumulated a bunch. I have about 2 or 3 pages of questions that have been submitted, so thank you for that. It is important that we have your input, and we really appreciate that. So, John and I are going to be tossing this back and forth, and I don't think we planned yet who's doing what, so we're not quite sure how these questions are going to go. So we're going to keep you on your toes. Just before we start, and I know those of you who have been watching this whole evening, just a reminder, we're going to start with questions after you have each done a 2-minute opening statement. You are going to be asked a question. You'll have 90 seconds to answer it. If an other candidate would like to respond in some way, that candidate will have 60 seconds to respond or rebut. And then if the original candidate would like to respond, they're going to get 30 seconds to do that, as well as back and forth. I really liked the discussion that we had with the school committee members, back and forth a little bit. I think it's important for the public to see that we have 3 very different candidates, and they have different ideas, and that's good. Discussion and debate is healthy. Then, once we've gone through all the questions, we'll wrap it up with each of you giving a 1-minute closing statement. First of all, Pam, it's nice to meet you in person.
Yes,
I've been
nice to
seeing
meet
your
you.
signs, and
Nice to meet you as
thank
well.
you for joining this evening.
Yeah.
Claudia, good to see you, and Preston as well, good to see you. Okay, let's see. Where do we want to start with this, John? Do you have one you'd like to start with?
Well,
Why don't you start?
why don't you want to start with
With their
opening
opening statements would probably be a
Opening
good thing.
statements? Okay, we can do that.
We're going to go left to right. Pam, if you would give us your opening statement, that would be great.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to be here, and good evening. My name is Pam Mimms, and I'm running for the Select Board, as you guys are aware. As a lifelong resident of Ashland, coming to Ashland when I was born in 1962, I've been here and I'm deeply vested in the community. I've seen the town change through the years, and I'm passionate about the town, and I'm passionate about making a positive impact in the town. I was born and raised in Ashland. I've seen the town grow through the years. I received my education through the Ashland school systems, and I went on to pharmacy and law school after that. As a member of the Select Board, I will make key issues a priority, such as affordable living, reducing taxes, sustainability, education, school safety, and business growth. Business growth is paramount to any community. It's important because it will drive down the tax burden on the residents. I believe that seniors in our community should be awarded a reduction in taxes. I believe in fiscal responsibility and a balanced budget. Working together, I know we can create a sustainable community and address the issues of trash collection, including orange bags. That's a hot topic. Growing up in Ashland, I've learned the importance of a strong work ethic and moral values from an early age. I was a paper girl in Ashland for years, and I attended the local church. I'm familiar with the impact of politics in the community, as my mother and brother were both members of the Ashland Board of Health. As a Select Board member, I'll be committed to working towards making Ashland a vibrant and thriving community for generations to come. Throughout my campaign, I will be promoting my vision of an affordable and prosperous Ashland where safety is a top priority for all residents. So what sets me aside different from these other candidates? I'm a business person. I'm focused on prosperity of the town and the residents. So I'm asking for your vote, as I'm passionate about Ashland, and I believe that my business and community focus will bring a positive perspective to our community. Please visit my website at pammims.com to learn more about me and my platform. I sincerely appreciate your vote, and I look forward to serving you as a Select Board member. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Pam.
Thank you.
Claudia, to
Okay.
an opening.
I'm up.
Yeah?
Good evening. My name is Claudia Bennett, and I'm running for the Select Board. I would like first to thank Yolanda, John, Barbara, and Paul and WACA-TV for hosting tonight's forum. I would also like to thank all of Ashland's citizens who volunteer their time to make our community a special place to live. When I married my husband, Dick, I became part of a family that has called Ashland home since 1856. In their world, I might still be a newcomer, but I promise you I bleed blue. We have raised our two daughters here, and they have both settled here with their families. My husband is a small business owner in Ashland, treasurer of the Ashland Business Association, and a Clocker Club member. We currently have 2 grandchildren in our schools, with the hope of more to come. I began volunteering in simple ways: classroom and PTO volunteer, school site council, and founding member of the Ashland Education Foundation. Eventually, I was elected to and served on the Ashland School Committee for almost 9 years. I also served in the new high school building committee, and today I proudly serve as secretary of the Mimms Building Committee. Last August, I retired after serving my final 9 years as the assistant principal and principal of the David Mimms School. In recent years, our community leaders have created fiscal policy that encourages productive and responsible outcomes. Opportunities have been created for small businesses. We've made land purchases to protect the history and character of our community. Investments have been made in our infrastructure. We are a green community and more sustainably conscious. We have invested in social services. We value our diversity and quality of life we provide for our citizens. As a member of our Select Board, I will continue that work that values our community spirit, to make Ashland a welcoming community for all people, to explore measures to assist our most vulnerable citizens and maintain socioeconomic diversity, to explore and support policies and measures for a more sustainable, healthy community, to build positive working relationships among citizens, boards, and committees to enhance productivity. Ashland has given me and my family a lifetime filled with things to be grateful for, whether it be in education or the police and fire services when we needed them. It is indeed time for me to give back. Thank you for your consideration.
And Preston, please.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Yolanda and John, for hosting this. This is a wonderful forum, and I'd like to thank WACA for broadcasting, and especially all the residents for watching this. This is really important, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. My name is Preston Crow, and I am running for the open select board seat. My wife and I moved to Ashland in 1999. Our son attends the middle school, and we have had several foster children over the years who also attended Ashland schools. I love Ashland. I often walk in the town forest with my dog, enjoy the library and the farmer's market, and bicycle with the Ashland Bike Club. As a longtime resident, I am committed to making our town a better place for all. I served 15 years on the planning board and currently serve on the Conservation Commission. I was also a founding member of the Sustainability Committee, where I led the town through the process of becoming a green community, which has made a significant impact on our town's environmental policies. I am also working on the Upper Charles Trail Committee, where we are working to bring a multi-use trail through town. I'm running for the Select Board because I believe that my experience, knowledge, and passion can make a difference in our town's future. If elected, I will work hard to listen to all residents and work to make Ashland a stronger, more sustainable community. I hope to earn your trust and your vote on May 16th. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Preston. Thank you, all three. Those were great opening statements. I think it's going to allow our residents to get to know you a little bit better. We're going to jump in with the first question. John, why don't you take that first one?
With a little levity. What are you guys nuts? I mean, wait, come on. What,
Yeah.
Like, okay, all right, let's just get that out on the table. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for stepping up and running for an important position in the community. With the first question, and I'll direct it to you, Pam, if I could, please, and then it'll go to Claudia and then Preston. What are the greatest challenges you see for the board that you're running for, and how are you prepared to address those?
I think, my background, I'm a pharmacist and I've gone to law school, and so I look at things from a community perspective, especially as we've gone through COVID. I think the greatest concern that I see is the growth of the community in terms of business. Business is paramount to any community. It's wonderful to attract residents, but you do have to have businesses to support that tax base, and that will help to drive down the cost for the residents themselves. So I see it as a challenge in the sense that we need to draw businesses to the community, and how do we do that? And that's important. You look at other communities and you look at the downtown, and I know that's a project and that's in the works, but how do we attract businesses to the community? How do we attract businesses to the fire station when you only have one, business that was interested in that? You really want more than one. You just don't want the one, because you want some competition out there. So that's what I see that. I see, attracting businesses to the town that can help, they can help the residents on the tax base.
Wonderful, thank you. So Claudia, the same question for you, the greatest challenges you see for the board, and how are you prepared to address those?
Yeah, I think our greatest challenges really are our growth, and how do we support going forward our community and keep the level of services that we have currently and are looking to improve upon. In terms of our economics, I think that we have a committee now, and Beth Reynolds, who's done a tremendous job. I think it is the small businesses that we have to support and expect that those are the ones that we should be bringing into town. We don't live and have the space or the superhighway going through here that is going to bring EMCs or others to our town. So I think it really is about making this a friendly place for our community businesses. And I know in recent weeks, even listening to some people come before the select board and the gentleman from Nick's Pizza and talking about things that he's doing and things that he's getting help with from Beth, and indeed the Clover Brewery folks as well. So that's definitely a challenge for us. But I think that we've been doing a great job, and I think we need to continue to do that.
And Preston.
Well, I think the challenge for the board, not necessarily for the town as a whole, is resources. Money, of course, being the most obvious resource, there's always more that you want to do than you have the funds for. But there's also staff time and staff resources, and we don't have the staff to do all the projects that we want to do, even if we had the money. And the way we address those is through planning and prioritizing. I know the town has a number of priority projects for the select board. Many of those are wrapping up at this point, and as those wrap up, we can start looking at some of the other projects that we have and elevating them to priority status. And we also, more from the financial side, we're starting the comprehensive plan process, which is long overdue, and it'll be great to have that, and that'll give us a lot of guidance on how to do the planning and the growth in a sustainable way that works for providing enough resources to grow the community as a community and not lessen the community through more demands on resources.
To just touch upon what Preston has just said, I think that the whole comprehensive plan is so critical for the future, and I'm sure this is going to come up tonight, but when you think about, so often we find ourselves in the position of trying to react to something that happened a long time ago, and it's not the planning board's fault, and it's not the select board's fault, it's no one's fault, but it's because we haven't had the appropriate plans in place. And I know from my experience, even in the schools, starting to really get strategic plans in place that help to guide you so that you don't end up 5, 10, 20 years down the road in the position of having to react as opposed to have a thoughtful plan in place.
It's true.
Any response to that, Pam?
Yeah, the strategic plans are extremely important, for the growth. You want that roadmap. You absolutely want that roadmap,
I'm going to jump to, you all talked a little bit in your response to challenge about business and buildings. What are your thoughts on the current building and sewer moratorium that are in town? And Claudia, I'll start with you.
So, I have to say that I am comfortable with the building moratorium in terms of multifamily projects at this point in time. We actually have some that are going to happen no matter what because they're already in process. I think that we have to slow down, take a deep breath. We do have, those projects to get through. And then again, with the comprehensive planning going on, hopefully that will guide us. I have some concerns about some of what the state's mandates in terms of affordable housing and housing that needs to happen around the train station and what that could potentially look like. And so I think that's something we really need the select board with our local politicians and our state politicians need to put some energy into rather quickly, really.
Okay. Preston, your thoughts on the building and the sewer moratorium that are in place?
I kind of wish we didn't have to do them. When we do a moratorium, it's kind of saying we didn't do the planning ahead of time that we should have done. And so we need to put on the brakes to get the planning in place to have the right frameworks. That said, until we have the comprehensive plan in place and really have a picture for where we want to go and how to make all of that work together, yes, we need them. And so.
Okay. Pam,
Yeah,
same question
I
for you.
do have concerns. It would be nice if we didn't have to follow suit, but we're required to. And so I absolutely do have some concerns. It definitely, it pulls from the resources of the town, and you really need to have that planning in place so to afford it within your budget.
Okay. Just one more sort of follow-up to Claudia, you mentioned the new multifamily zoning that's going on, and again, we got a number of questions from different people about that. So I'm going to sort of consolidate and get your thoughts. So, like many communities in Massachusetts, Ashland is being required to rezone the town to allow for a potentially additional 1,100 units of housing to be built by right. We've also just built about 1,000 units of housing in the last 5 to 10 years. Preston, I'll start with you. How would you address this challenge of this new zoning that we're being required to talk to the state about?
Well, I understand this really well, having been on the planning board, and when it comes to a state mandate, sometimes you take multiple approaches, and one of those is you push back on the state and say, can we do this differently? Can we work with other towns and have more of a regional approach than a town-by-town approach? And I know those efforts are underway, and that's good. What we also need to do is look at, if we are going to have to zone for lots more apartments or multifamily in one area, maybe we also need to look at some of our other zoning in other areas and cut down on the density elsewhere. This is something where, again, we need the comprehensive plan. It needs to take this into account and get a good picture of where things go. At the same time, from a select board perspective, a lot of this, when it comes to zoning and land use, we really need to keep the planning board right in the forefront of this and not try to lead zoning from the select board standpoint, and respect the planning board and their position there.
Okay. Pam, your thoughts on the MBTA zoning requirements that we're facing?
Again, I do have concerns, and I always look at it from, how does this impact the town from a resource perspective? Planning needs to be in the midst of it, and I do agree with Preston that, planning board, select board needs to really pull planning board into it, because they're going to be closer to it. Select board is, I would say, for lack of a better term, more of an oversight in the sense of, there's expertise on the planning board, and you need to make sure you have a strategic plan in place to appropriately manage it. Otherwise, it's going to impact your budget, ultimately the bottom line, and you're gonna have problems trying to meet, maybe a budget on, for whatever the school committee or whatever on a different level, and you don't want to pull from another area to, take care of the housing or to, manage the housing resources.
Okay, Claudia, same question to you.
Yeah, I think, one of the problems is that the planning board won't have a lot to say on this, right? That with the state mandating this, and it'd be by right housing, then basically it removes any special requests that would go forward before the planning board and takes them out of the picture. So I think a lot of what happens has to happen with us and our state government, and the ability to communicate with them and work with other communities as well, perhaps form some kind of a regional alliance in this regard. It isn't just us that are being impacted by this. We might be impacted a little more heavily and a little differently. However, there are other communities in a similar situation. But this is something, affordable housing is huge in this state. It's on the top of the mind, I think, of the mayor of Boston and our new governor. And so I think it's going to be hard to make it go away, but we need to get them working with us to move forward on this.
Can I piggyback that question?
Go
a
right
little bit?
ahead, please.
Because I think you guys are all spot on your responses. But what the thing is you have to understand is follow the railroad track. This is happening in our neighbors' community. It's not just happening in Ashland. It's happening both of our neighbors to the west and the east of us, a little bit to the north. So public transportation is going to become a key role, because you're talking potentially, if you follow the tracks, 10,000 new units. Now, we can debate if they're going to be occupied and everything like that. You put 10,000 more cars in the morning commute tomorrow and tell me you're going to be on time for work. What is the key to public transportation in your vision of seeing with these impacts on this new zoning? What do we have to
Well,
do?
the key to public transportation, right? There's a few things. We do have the MW, right, the Metro West, and
All that new development needs bus stops.
Right,
Would you
and
agree?
that's
Yep.
something that would
Yep.
have to be increased. We're gonna have to have more trains go through. And
Gotta fix the T to do that,
yeah, absolutely.
right?
But if it is a state mandate and there is, the T's not ready to be adding anything, right? I think we can all see that clearly. So I think that kind of maybe helps us to give them some more time for us to work on this. But obviously, there has to be more public transportation before we can put more cars on the road. Luckily, there's one, if there's a good thing to come from COVID, is that lots of people can work remotely now and do so effectively. So that can help with transportation, and maybe that becomes even more. Maybe some of these spaces become meeting places for people to go to work. So they get out of their homes. They're not working remotely from their homes, but they're working just like they do sometimes in the city, where you have people who basically rent a space and they go in and they work there. I mean, that would be a good use of some of our spaces in our community, and again, help with our economic development for our businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, the T is so important, and working really with the state, and obviously they're working on it, and they know there's an issue. So, it's
Is it fixable?
I'm sorry?
Is it fixable?
I don't know that we have enough time to debate that tonight, John.
I was going to say, yeah, no comment.
Anything's fixable. It's a matter of time and money, right?
Right.
And I'll just digress. When I lived in Boston as a student, I used to ride the T all the time, and that was always an experience. But in terms of what can be done, is definitely the T and the local transit and more stops, and there's things that can be done, but that's long-term planning, and that gives us more time, as Claudia had mentioned. It gives us time to get to where we need to be along with them.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think the mindset at Beacon Hill and putting this kind of mandate in is that if you build housing near train stops, people are going to do their commuting on the train. We can look at the data from Cirrus Apartments and see how much of that is true, and you can see they've got parking lots with lots of cars there. We don't have a lot of people there who don't own a car because they commute on the train all the time.
Right.
And that's another point to help that we should be looking at and pushing back is, to what extent is this housing really going to result in more T ridership, which is really what it's designed for.
Yeah, public transportation
Yeah.
ridership.
Well, I do think that, over time, right, we are raising a new generation who might be more amenable to a T, especially, and to public transportation in general, than perhaps my generation has
Yeah.
been. So, I think we might see that change over time, but again, that's not a change that'll be next year or the year after, but over time, the workplace is changing, and I think that ways to get to your workplace will change as well.
I'm going to keep us with infrastructure. I'm going to go off of transportation and housing. We've had a number of questions related to sewer and water, and talking about the cost, talking about the fact that our water plant is paid off. Should our fees go up? Should our fees go down? The first question I have for each of you, and Preston, this one's going to start with you, and there's going to be a couple of follow-up questions. In general, tell me or tell our listeners, what do you know about Ashland sewer and water?
Well,
You have 90 seconds.
I could talk about this all day. I know our water comes from House Street, but we also have the MWRA connection, which is officially only for emergency use. I would like to look into maybe taking some of that water for when we have limits on our withdrawal permit, because we're withdrawing from the aquifer, but it's based on the reservoir levels. So yeah, having only one source of water that's really ours to draw from is kind of limiting. And as to sewer, I have the good fortune to have a septic system at home. So, but I know we have, I think, the highest sewer rates in the whole MWRA system, because not only we have to pay them, but we also have to pay Framingham a whole lot for putting that through. There's been some talk of maybe someday getting our own sewage treatment plant, which potentially could pay for itself. If the numbers work out right, it would be great to look into that and see how that could work.
Okay.
So that's...
Claudia, tell us what you know about Ashland water and sewer.
Well, I know I turned the faucet on, and no, I've been in the community long enough to remember when we built the water treatment facility, and it was state of the art. And I know that we too have a septic system. I know that that's great in terms of you pay less except when it fails and you have to have it replaced like we've had to do. So these are infrastructure, improvements that would be certainly helpful to our community. I know that the water rates and the sewer rates are really tough on families. And I know our water bill is, I know my husband's been known through the years to shut the water off in the basement so that my daughter would stop taking a shower. But in reality, it's something that it's money that comes out of our pockets. I don't have any solutions. I know that we do pay Framingham a significant amount to run our sewer through there. And it would be nice in terms of having another well. I know at one point we've looked at Spring Street and other sources. I know they have not panned out, so we might be limited to that degree. I know that Hopkinton has also been paying us for some of our water, and I don't know if that's something it must be pretty close to renewal or not at this point. So that would be something I'd have to investigate. Okay, Pam?
What I know is it's expensive. I would say that. I think from an infrastructure perspective, we need to look at how we can reduce costs associated with it. Does that mean, building a water treatment plant? Does that mean adding additional wells? What does that mean? I don't know. I can't even answer that. I look at it also from the perspective of, rationing water. I own property in Arizona, a dry state. It's a desert. Never have rationed water out in Arizona. I don't understand in a state that has so much water and so much rain that there's rations. And I understand in terms of Arizona, it's coming through, we have Colorado River, however, that is draining down. But, in terms of Ashland, though, that's something that I would definitely want to look at. We have public sewage because, it was my mother and a few other neighbors walk the streets to bring in public sewage where we are. So we actually have it, and we don't have septic systems. But it's expensive in general, and it's something that needs to be looked at and see if we can come up with some solutions. I know there's a lot of talk about it. I'm a solution-driven person, so I look at solutions and say, what can we do to drive down those costs? Because it's expensive for families. It's very, very expensive. And that's something that families would definitely appreciate, a reduction in cost.
Okay, so this is a specific question, and you've all sort of alluded or had somewhat of an answer. The question is, our water infrastructure has deferred maintenance. Water main breaks around town, and if you live near Prospect Street, you dealt with it today. I had to go around a detour because they were fixing something. Yep. I personally, my water wasn't shut off, but I had to go around the detour. What will you do as a member of the planning board? As a member of the select board, to get a plan to address the deferred maintenance? Very specific question. And Preston.
That is a good question, and it's very timely today. It seems like we have about one water main break a month. I remember we had to do an emergency certification for the Concom on work on one on High Street a while back. It is a unfortunately consistent problem, and obviously this is something we need to plan for. I don't know what our deferred maintenance actually looks like. That's something I need to get up to speed on, to be honest. But infrastructure is important, and we need to work on it.
Pam?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's something that I would definitely have to think about, really, and do some reading on. But infrastructure is key. It's extremely important. It's important in terms of rusty pipes. I mean, that sounds really kind of basic, but you don't want to wait till you get to the point where you have a break. It's like your own home. You just don't wait until you have a pipe that breaks. You have somebody that comes in and looks at inspection pipes, and so you don't get into this kind of mode of having to fix something on the spot and pay extra as opposed to regular general maintenance.
Okay, Claudia?
Yeah, water's problematic, right? No matter where it is, if it isn't where you want it to be, it's problematic. I think that I kind of wonder if we even know about some of the piping and its existence, and when it was, what kind of record keeping was even being done in the days when lots of our pipes were buried underground. But I think that, number one, we have to take a look at what we do know and put a plan in place. It's another one of those reactive things where you're just waiting for the pipe breaks and you go and fix it. That's a tough way to live your life. I think that, sometimes in our lives we have to live like that, but whenever you can prevent living reactively, it's a good thing for everybody.
Good. John, where do we want to go next?
Ashland is a wonderful community. I think we'd all agree with that. But it's not an inexpensive community to live in. And with record inflation, stagflation, rising gas prices again, Ashland is at epicenter of a little bit. Is it affordable to live in Ashland anymore? And I think you mentioned it, Claudia, in your opening statement. We talked about affordable housing. I'll go on a little bit of a rant here. I'll get to the question. A lot of politicians talk about what affordable housing is, but affordable housing has changed over the years because you can't call it Section 8 anymore, and you can't. But affordable housing is also for teachers, police officers, people who work at the post office. But I believe that affordable housing is a core value of any community, and I worry that we're pricing seniors out of the community. I'll start with you, Pam. What is your concern about affordable housing, and how will you, as a select board member, make that an agenda for the community?
Yeah, I do have concerns, and especially for our seniors that have been here for many, many years. Just looking at the cost of anything, and definitely including taxes. There's seniors that are struggling to pay their taxes, and they want to stay in Ashland, and they don't all want to move to, say, a residential facility or so. Solutions, again, I go back to business. I'm really focused on business, because as you draw business in, the businesses don't pull those resources from the town, but they simply drive the taxes down. And so that's I always go back to that. And I do have a concern. I have a great concern, a grave concern for our seniors. Their Social Security checks don't keep up with inflation. And so they struggle to pay for anything. And I've talked to enough seniors in town. I'm known enough, and they're very concerned, to the point that even when they come to meetings of this nature, they're even concerned to voice their opinions, because they're afraid of the repercussions. Not that there would be any repercussions, but they're just concerned. They want to stay in their homes, and they just don't know how to do it, and they're struggling.
Preston?
Yeah, I was just speaking with one senior as an example, and she can't pay her taxes. She apparently works out something with the town every year where they put a lien against her equity in the home, kind of like a reverse mortgage. And when she finally moves or passes on, that's going to all come out of the house. And it's a shame she has to do that. I've also at the same time heard other people say, we're running tight on budgets, we're going to need an override. And I don't see that as the right answer, at least not now. I don't think there's the political reality where if we, as a select board, said, yeah, let's do this and put it on the ballot, there'd be a big campaign and it would fail again. So I don't want to go there. We need workforce housing, affordable housing, subsidized housing, all these different categories. We need a diverse population. And we have a good, diverse population of different sizes and prices of houses in Ashland. We need to keep it that way. And part of that is through the comprehensive plan that's in process. There's zoning things that can be done with floor area ratio requirements to keep small homes on small lots. And I think I'm out of time.
Claudia? And then I'm going to hit you guys with a follow-up real quick.
Yeah, so affordable housing. Right, that is a complicated and critically important issue. And as somebody who might be a senior, and who have lived in a larger home in Ashland, and who were thinking, where would we live? Well, I can tell you, we're not moving out of Ashland, because my husband would have to be divorced, and so one of the things I've thought about is, what are some creative solutions, right? Can we create housing both for families, right, that are smaller homes. Builders come in and they build huge homes. Why can't we have a development with 3-bedroom homes or, two multifamily, two family homes? Maybe seniors live on both sides. Why can't we do some of those things through some of our zoning and some of our planning board? And I don't know, maybe they're not possible, but I think that there might be ways to improve upon that. We need to have affordable housing. I won't forget, probably ever, speaking to a custodian in our school one day, and him saying to me, I'm going to choke up a little bit, him saying to me, Claudia, I worked so hard. He was a great guy. He worked, 40 hours a week, worked overtime when we needed him, and he said, I can't afford to live. Mm-hmm. He can't afford to live. When I was a kid, and I say this all the time too, when I was a kid, the milkman lived down the street. You could live in a neighborhood with people of mixed professions, and we've lost a little bit of that. So I would like to find a way, maybe, I know I'm out of time, to bring back maybe some smaller home developments, and maybe there's some way to do that working with developers, so it becomes more attractive to them.
My quick follow-up, yes or no, and it's a NIMBY question, not a my backyard question. Yeah. Would you, each individual, I'll start with you, Pam, would you support and advocate for more senior disabled housing in Ashland?
Absolutely. Senior disabled or senior or disabled. I'm not sure in terms of, yeah. I think it's important to have senior housing, absolutely. There are many seniors that have bred into the town, and I feel that the town is responsible and should give back to those seniors that have put their time in. Okay. So absolutely.
Claudia?
Yeah, I mean, specifically senior affordable housing, yes. I think, I know that the town, way back, Yolanda, when you and I were on school committee, I think it kind of originated, even though the select board took credit for it, but that for the tax, credits for seniors. Right. And maybe there's more that we can do there as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's also too bad that seniors have to even think about leaving their homes, right? It's too bad that there isn't a way to have them be able to stay in their homes. Mm-hmm. But yes, I would like to find ways to provide affordable housing to people who would want to work here and people who want to live here.
And then senior disabled housing, would you advocate for that, Preston?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I would. Okay. And when I was on the planning board, we did put in some senior residence communities. The Lanterns on Chestnut is an excellent community. I don't remember. It's not particularly affordable. It's not particularly affordable. The affordable was not necessarily one of the things you asked in the question. Right. But I would advocate for more senior housing, and we definitely need affordable in there going forward.
Yeah. Just because, and I'll wrap it up on this, but. And Claudia, you can speak to this from your experience in the schools. The disabled community means so much more different. It can be wheelchair, it can be senior, yes. It can be mental health, it can be autism, it can be Down syndrome.
Absolutely.
I didn't hear any of you mention on that.
I mentioned disabled, absolutely. Okay. I did mention it. And you have to absolutely provide housing for them and affordable housing. I mean, homelessness is huge in this country in general.
Homelessness is big in
and myself. I'm involved in homeless communities in the sense of, I feed the homeless and I'm out there and so it's huge everywhere. And, you have mental health issues, you have, you have social issues, you have people that are addicted to drugs, and it just goes on and on and on about the issues. And that's what we are as a community, is that we are a social community to take care of people in this country. That's what we do. And that's what we should do. So absolutely, I think it's so important that we should, take care of our seniors, take care of the mental health, disabled. It's so important.
And I don't think we should necessarily be, building, okay, you all go live over there, all you old people live over here, no. All you disabled people live over there. And, I like to see a mix of people. I mean, I know that, I don't want to go and live with just people who are my age or older. I want to live in a community where I can experience children growing up and adults who go off to work every day, and maybe even, you could give them a hand with something if they're going to be gone for the day. So it's a challenge, and the homelessness is
It's huge.
is heartbreaking.
And believe it or not everyone, we do have homeless here in Ashland.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yolanda, from my
Everywhere.
days in the school, I know
Everywhere.
things about our community that
Yeah.
I never thought could be true.
And you have homeless children trying to get
Yes, you do.
educated.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
So,
Just for fair time, any closing thought on that, Preston?
No, that's
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
We are going to now talk to budgets, taxes. Again, we got a number of questions on those. I'm going to start with one, and then we'll dig into it a little bit deeper. This is a question. It says, Ashland's budget has grown considerably since 2017, along with our property taxes due to much higher appraisals and 2 large capital debt exclusions. Yet we still read around budget time that staff mention wanting an operational override. Are you in support of further increasing our town's taxes or living within our financial needs? I'm going to start with you, Claudia.
Yeah, it's really complicated, right? I think that we all want to live within our means, but we also want everything that the town has, and we want employees who are responsive to us. We want high-quality employees who want to come into town hall and talk to people who know what they're doing. We want our kids to go to school and have high-quality teachers. We don't want teachers going to other school districts because they can make so much more money. I think that it is expensive to live here. It's expensive to live everywhere. I think when you look at where we fall in terms of our per capita spending in that, across Middlesex County or across, I know that you can even look at it comparing similar communities. We, again, I think somebody mentioned in terms of the schools, we always fall in a lower section. So I think that those are things that we have to talk about honestly and openly, and they are absolutely challenges, but we have to be prepared to deal with the outcome of whatever we choose.
Same question for you, Pam.
yeah, it is very complicated. We absolutely, and I agree with Claudia, we absolutely want the best of everything, but it does cost. So, I look at things as, we have great schools, great high school, brand new, public works building. I look at that and I say, do we need top line on every single thing, or should we put the money towards better teachers as opposed to maybe the biggest, bestest school that's out there looking structure-wise? I look at it like put the money towards the people. The public works building over there. I mean, I think that's great if it was paid for. If somebody said, here's the cash to pay for it. But, the taxpayers are going to end up paying for that. And so, that drives up the cost of living. So, I'm of the mindset that it's great to have the best of everything, but what can we afford? And living within our means is important. It's important anywhere. It's important in your own home.
Okay, Preston, same question.
Yes, in the question you pointed out, it was pointed out that the budgets have grown significantly.
Yep.
Well, the community itself has grown significantly, so the expenses have grown significantly. So a larger budget doesn't mean we're actually spending more per person. So things are expensive. We would love to spend more and do more as a community, but we need to live within our means just like everybody else does. As I said before, there is not the political will in the community to do an operational override at this time. I would not support putting the community through another one at this time. We're doing all right at this time as a community financially, and I think we can continue to manage for several more years the way things are going.
I appreciate that answer, and that leads me to another question that we got from one of our residents. How will you help manage the budget to halt the increases in town? And Pam, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I would absolutely want to go through really line item and look at each each increase. I was recently looking at the budget of this past week, and there's some things on there that is a question: do we need, the latest on everything? Do we need to increase here and add an employee over here? I don't know. I'd have to look at it, but in greater detail. But I absolutely had the opportunity to look at it this past week. And so I would say refine the budget. As in any business, you have to meet your budgets or your business doesn't exist. And so I'm used to, and my comfort level is meeting budgets, and not increasing them at will. If budgets go up, then that means we have to have some revenue coming in from somewhere. So it's that balance. Again, I go back to a balanced budget. It's not just arbitrary. It has to be balanced, and there has to be justification for increase in expenditure as well as revenue.
Okay. Claudia, same for you. How would you help manage the budget to halt increases?
Well, I have a fair amount of experience with town and community budgets. Through the years, I've sat on negotiations as a school committee member with teachers' unions and that, and I've sat with FinComs and select boards and school committees that didn't always function very well together, and struggled at coming to a budget, a balanced budget, something that worked for everyone. The community has done great work in the past several years, and in part through the leadership of our town manager and the current members of the committees. And that's huge. But I think that we have to sit down and talk, and we have to build relationships with one another, and we have to plan. We have to plan to know what we're looking for. Today we're okay. Where are we going to be in 3 years? Where are we going to be in 5 years? And we have to start thinking about that and planning how we get there and how we solve it when we're there, instead of just waiting till it hits us.
Preston, same question. How will you help manage the budget?
Well, one thing that we've been very lucky with recently is we've gotten a lot of one-time funds, whether it's a new $8 million for downtown, it's the ARPA money, and all of that. And that is good usually for spending on infrastructure and projects like that are, building things, not so much staff and long-term things for the town, or I should say ongoing. And when we're spending that kind of money, one thing to look at is, can we spend that money on things that make our buildings more sustainable and lower the operational costs? Like maybe we should put a solar array on the town hall and cut down on the electric bills. Beyond that, there's always, as the others have said, going through the line items and figuring out where we can cut and what the minimum impact is.
Just an example of forward thinking, and I really want to give Mr. Kendall credit for this, but really with the new Mindes school, it is zero net ready or net zero ready, and there are many things that have been done in the building of that building that will help going down the road, will save us money and eventually get us to net zero with a little investment, but it will get us there. But in the meantime, we'll pay significantly less than we would have paid, and by the way, we'll pay less and we'll be helping the environment. And what a great place to put our kids in that situation. And it's just an amazing building, and I'm proud about it.
And if I can follow up on that, the same with the public safety building, though when the Public Safety Committee was originally proposing the heating system, they said, doing the geothermal heat pumps, that's too expensive. And I got together with the Sustainability Committee and pushed back and said, this analysis is wrong, and you need to take a second look at this. And they did, and that's what they ended up going with. And the operational costs of that building are going to be much lower now.
Yeah, I absolutely believe in terms of the net zero. We need to get there. It will benefit us all the way around.
Can I just piggyback? Ashland does a good job. We build state-of-the-art community center. We renovate a library. We spend lots of money to renovate this building. We have a new public safety building. We're building new schools, and they're all wonderful things for the community. But sometimes we don't always take as good of care of them because we have budget constraints, and during the school committee, we talked about, one of the first things to do is cut out the janitors. Well, you invest millions of dollars in new infrastructure, and then the first thing you do is cut the janitors and, the support staff. What will you do as select board members to mitigate that?
Well, I think that's one of the first things that would be on our plates is get a plan in place for how we're going to care for these buildings that are coming online, and that needs to take really high priority because we don't need to let that get ahead of us. I think, for many years, the people that maintain our buildings have done a tremendous job. It's just that there are sometimes that the life of a building is so far beyond its time that you do need to build a new building, and then again you have to. But it's a lot easier to take care of a new building than it is a very old one that's falling down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As John, as you mentioned, we have some great new buildings in town. We need to take care of them. And, cutting the janitorial staff doesn't make sense. You want to maintain a building and keep it to where it needs to be. And how do we do that? Sustainability, do you, utilize, make your buildings green buildings. I mean, there's ways for the building to give back to you so you don't have to cut the staff, to maintain that building.
Preston, thoughts?
Well, we should have, and I'd be shocked if we don't have, a maintenance plan for all of our facilities. And that's just a normal standard thing for a town to have. And if we don't, that needs to be fixed. And now that we have, given that you have one, you can then look and get a report every year of what maintenance didn't we do, what is the impact, and if there's something you didn't service this year, well, we make sure that next year that doesn't get deferred, and maybe if you have to defer things, juggle them around. Don't keep everything all in one area, because then it breaks.
Okay. We're getting almost done with our time. I thought we'd hit 2 more questions. John, what do you think you want to go to next? Either the historic or transparency. What do you think?
Let's do them both.
Okay. Let's start with historic. Let's see. Historical Commission is trying to establish a historic district in the downtown Ashland vicinity, and from the Ocean House to the post office, then over to the area where the library is. It encompasses mostly commercial buildings and some town buildings, and there may be a few residential buildings, but the majority is commercial. Creating this historic district will help to preserve historic buildings within the district. The question is, as a member of the Ashland Select Board, would you support the creation of a historic district in downtown Ashland? And if you would support it or not support it, what would be your reasoning? Pam, why don't you start?
Yeah, I would absolutely support it. It just goes to the character of the town. And, of course, we want to ensure that we can afford it, but it goes to the character of the town. And, how would I do that? Ensure that the historical committee is part of it, and what can be done in terms of the town from a historical perspective. I would absolutely support it.
Okay, Preston?
This is a great question because this is something that I have been hearing people talk about for years and years and years, and it would be awesome to get this done. I fully support this and want to see it happen.
Yeah, I think it sounds, it's so nice to celebrate our history, right, in this community. And recently, I attended an event that the 26.2 Foundation had celebrating the Ashland as the original home of the Boston Marathon. And these are things that get lost, right? And so now we're looking at using the fire station, right, going forward. And so important, so nice that and I remember many years ago when this building, I think the select board at the time wanted to tear it down and build something new, and the town voted them, out, not out personally, but
I think that may have happened too.
voted for,
but-
yeah, maybe.
I think it did, yeah.
But they voted to rehab the building, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I remember coming here with my brothers, and we weren't from Ashland, but coming here with my brothers for slot car races or whatever Boy Scouts did. So, in any case, yes, I would support a historic, I mean, it's hard for me to just say 100% without knowing what all the details are.
Right.
But it certainly sounds like a great idea to me.
Okay.
We talked earlier tonight about maybe the death of local media and how WACA plays an important role in providing people access to information in town. And it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but it's a good question for candidates. Preston, what does transparency mean to you?
Transparency means not just following the letter of the law on like the open meeting law and such, though that is important. It means following the spirit of everything you do in government. You need to make sure that the community is not taken by surprise, that you've done every opportunity to communicate, to be open, to not have any appearance of backroom deals, and just keep everything out in the open. I worked really hard to do that when I was on the planning board. When we were having discussions about various topics, even though we weren't legally required to take resident comments, I would always let residents speak on any of the issues we were discussing, even when we had meetings going till 11. So that is transparency to me.
Yeah, I,
Or Pam?
oh, okay. I think it's important that residents have access to political figures within the community. And it's extremely important to be transparent. There's always this cloud, especially in this political climate throughout the country, that, the politicians are doing something over here and we're doing something over there. We don't want that. This is a small town. We want to work together as one body to move forward. Transparency is so important, and diversity is important as well. The country is changing, and so we need to change to it and move forward with it.
Yeah, so I joined town politics when transparency wasn't in its finest condition. And I know firsthand that didn't serve anybody's interest. It didn't serve the interest of someone who was being less than transparent to get something done, and it just doesn't work. I think that in terms of transparency, we all have to do things intentionally. I had a little bit of a conversation about this with someone recently, that for one thing, among boards, you have to build relationships with all the individuals from all the boards, right? And that takes time and effort and energy, because we might not always agree, but I hope that we can always come to consensus and be respectful and hear the other person. And sometimes if we don't have a great relationship with that person, we have to be even more intentional to make sure that they understand what our position is and what we're trying to work towards. It really takes hard work to have those kind of relationships and to move things forward. So transparency, I try to always be honest and open. I mean, I've messed up a couple of times in my life, but I think that it's just people need to know that what you're saying to them is truthful and honest, and that they can say it back to you. One of the things that I've always valued, and this was very true as an educator, that is you brainstorming. You say whatever you want. Don't be afraid of being wrong. Just put it out there. And because from that, we all grow and learn more. And that's the type of thing that I don't want anybody to ever be afraid to say something to me because they think I'm going to judge them. And you know what? Our country isn't living like that on a national level, but we can live like that on a local level.
It's nice to see that the town manager puts out a weekly newsletter every week. And I want to give kudos to Brandy and Yolanda, because in the town manager's newsletter, I just saw this past week that selectmen office hours are coming back.
Yep.
And that's an important piece to transparency, because when I was on the board, we did office hours, and you put yourself out there, and you're given an extra hour, maybe 2 hours of your time, and the people come to you and they expect you, number one, to fix the problem today. It's Saturday, I'm not going to fix it today, but but I'm going to fix it. So how will you guys handle that type of, customer feedback with coming onto a board with 4 other members and a strong town manager? How do you guys handle that?
In terms of getting information from
Getting
people?
information back to your peers.
Back to our peers. Yeah, so, I mean, one thing, I've had a conversation with a few people about how it's changed, right? Because people have a zillion channels to watch. It isn't like the old days when they used to, sooner or later, they saw me on WACA because there wasn't that much to watch, And so, it is different. We had a newspaper reporter in the room every time we met, and the next day there was an article. We had a weekly tab newspaper. We had a monthly directions newsletter, and there were lots of ways to get information. Kudos to Mike for his because you have to push information out. You have to be where people are. It's the truth that no matter, lots of times you can do a lot of things like have meetings and that, but people tend not to come. You have to go to where they are. I'm excited, I have lots of reasons to be in a lot of different places in the community with a family and grandchildren now who really kind of push me into places. And that's invigorating, right, to hear from other people and to talk to them. So I really think it's about pushing information out.
Yeah, I agree. It's really, it's a great thing to push out that information, and Michael, absolutely putting that information out there. I think the having hours, any kind of sort of office hours with the community is great. I think talking to people is great. Communication is a key. We have to have the communication. You don't have the communications, that's where the walls go up. And so I think it's extremely important to get out, to talk to people, to listen to what they have to say. And, maybe everything can't get accomplished immediately. But if you talk to people and explain to them, they understand. Most people are pretty reasonable in terms of, things can't get fixed overnight, but they want to be heard and they want to voice their opinion. I think lacking their, just being out there and not allowing people to be heard is an issue. Because that's how things kind of bubble up to the surface when people haven't been heard, or they felt like they haven't been heard or dismissed. And I think it's really, really important to put ourselves out there and say, hey, we have these office hours, come by, talk to us, or we'll come and talk to you. Maybe we're going to be in your neighborhood, maybe we're going to be canvassing. I don't know, it is work, but that's okay. That's why we're here. We're doing this to serve the community. Thank you.
Yeah. And it gives us insight, right?
And you let Preston respond, and then you can.
As Pam said, communication is key, and the office hours are great. I took advantage of them recently.
Yes, you did.
And but there's also the informal office hours, and this brings up a question that was asked to one of the earlier sets of candidates about how much time things take. There's the 2 meetings a week, but when I go to any community event in Ashland, there is almost always 2 or 3 select board members who attend that event. I don't care what it is. There'll be select board members there. And I recognize that's something that I try to do that now, but I'm going to be doing a lot more of that going forward if I have the honor of winning this seat.
Great. Well, that concludes our questions for our candidates. Now on to the closing statements, and let me just, somewhere on all these papers I made a note of who went first. That's the problem when you have too many pieces of paper.
I can tell you I went first.
I think I was going
Okay,
to
so
say, I think
Pam-
We went left to right.
Pam went first, then Claudia, and then Preston.
We'll go right to left. Preston?
All right. I wish I had more time to talk about net zero, but I'd like to thank a lot of people. First, my fellow candidates. I think we had a great discussion tonight. I'd like to thank the moderators who've done a tremendous job, and to WACA for hosting and for giving us the opportunity to speak with the community, and especially to the residents of Ashland. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us tonight. As a candidate for Select Board, I am committed to listening to all residents and working together to build a stronger, more sustainable community. My experience on the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, Sustainability Committee, and Upper Charles Trail Committee have prepared me well for the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. I believe that we can achieve great things for Ashland if we work together and put our community first. I hope that I have earned your trust and your vote. Thank you.
Okay, Claudia?
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for attending this evening, and again, thank you to our hosts and to all of our families out there. Last week, maybe it might have been 2 weeks ago now, I had the opportunity to chat with the Clover Road Brewing gents. They were at the Earth Day event, and they said how excited that they are at the prospect of doing business in such a vibrant, happening town, and it made me feel proud. And I realized, again, why I want to do this is because I want to keep this community and the work for it moving forward. The skills I bring to the position of Select Board member have been shaped by simple values, a lifetime lived in Ashland, and the desire for a bright future for all of Ashland's children and grandchildren. They include a spirit of respectful collaboration with the ability and desire to hear and learn from others, experience in policy creation to guide strategic direction, experience in working with individuals and departments in building school and town budgets, experience and insight into the workings of town government from the perspective of citizen, elected official, and employee. Thank you for your time this evening and the consideration of your vote. And just a quick thank you to Steve Mitchell for his years of service on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for everyone here, and thank you for allowing this debate to happen. I ask for your vote. I've been in town for years. I bring business approach to, to this position. I've had years of experience in the business world, and I know that I could definitely bring some value here. It's great with all that's happening within the town, and it's great in terms of having, trails built in the town and the livability of the town. But I also bring, from a business perspective, how we can reduce taxes, how we can just make it an affordable place to live. So I want to thank everyone, and I appreciate this opportunity, and I look for your vote on May 16th. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for.
One more line, John. You forgot.
I got so wrapped up in everybody's closing statements. I'm just so excited. I want to thank you for the candidates. That's going to wrap up tonight's show. I want to thank all of you, and most importantly, for stepping up and running for your community. I think it's one of the greatest things that you can do. And I want to thank Yolanda for bearing with me this evening as well.
Thank you, John. It's been great working with you. Thank you to all the candidates. Thank you all for being here in person and for watching. I do want to, and this wasn't in my notes, but I do want to remind all of you that there might only be one seat on the Board of Selectmen that's open, and I would recommend or encourage that if you are not the person who gets that seat, that there are still so many volunteer needs here in town, whether it's another board or a committee or Green Up Ashland Day that's coming up. So if it doesn't happen with this seat, stay involved, get involved in other ways, and we rely on our volunteers. So this is only one way to volunteer. So thank you all again for watching. A couple of reminders. Please make sure you do get out and vote. The last day to register to vote is this Friday for the election. Town meeting is this Wednesday night. There is early in-person voting happening, and that is on Saturday, May 6th. So this coming Saturday from 9 to 1 right here in the basement of Town Hall, as well as Wednesday, May 10th. Town Hall is open from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. So you can come in and do early voting. Actual election day is Tuesday, May 16th. So if you don't want to do early voting, go to the high school where all precincts will vote. Thank you again to Barbara and Paul for supporting us. John, thank you so much for doing this with me, and thank you all for watching. That wraps up our candidates debate. Hope to see you at some great events or at the election or town meeting. I'm Yolanda Greaves, the host of Around the Clock. Thank you so much for watching this WACA-TV candidates debate. Have a great night and get out and vote.